Buka Molo, the youth have called on the country to rally behind them as they mark 14 years since the promulgation of the 2010 Constitution, the day also known as the Katiba Day.
Tomorrow, August 27, Katiba Day, will not just be a day of commemoration, it will be a day of mass action. We are announcing a general strike, a protest against the tyranny of William Ruto, and a demand for his immediate resignation. We will not rest until justice is done.
We cannot continue living in an active crime scene and do nothing about it. We cannot continue with the wake of corruption, with the wake of abductions, with the wake of police killings, with the wake of everything wrong that is going on in this government.
We are inviting you tomorrow as the Katiba turns 14 at 14:00 hours. We are asking you to take a short break and ask yourself whether this constitution that gives us and grants us these rights has been respected.
That's the News Wire. I'm La Obaka.
.5 SpiceFM, Kisumu.
The following takes place from 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. every weekday on SpiceFM.
Good morning, and I love your show.
Thank you.
Having come from a Kikuyu radio background, I migrated to Spice because of the content.
I was born in a slum, but somehow I got a break in life. So sometimes when you see the sweating coming out because of the passion and whatever it is, behind the noise, there are people. And we share the same umbilical cord.
It shouldn't be like that. I am so disappointed. We used to tell Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga that he's doing police of conmanship. And even President Uhuru Kenyatta, serikali hii ndio iko na conmanship ya hali ya juu. You cannot promise people that you reduce tax, then you double.
In politics, there is the issue of trust. For you to turn around and then stab the same people who gave you that trust, there is no other level of dishonesty. And hii mambo utaona dunia tu.
The Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation.
Thank you very much, Eric, and it's good to be at the Situation Room.
Always a pleasure coming here. This is the most challenging interview panel in Kenya. You guys are very well informed, and as you can see, Charles today, very philosophical.
To be poor in this country is the greatest sin you can commit, not just from a legal perspective, but from life generally. It is very, very skewed.
We've just heard on the floor of Parliament, just most recently, a leader within the ODM saying that Sisi ni ng'ombe is a baba.
Yeah.
Which means that you are willing to be milked dry.
Hapo.
You cannot force me to believe. I'll give way. If it's land that I'm told to return to you, I will. Okay? Because the court has said so. But I'll continue saying, watu wamenirusha. That's all that I'm doing.
The Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation.
When you're impeached, you're impeached. When you are sentenced, you are sentenced.
Madam Chief Justice.
Until the sentence is set aside.
Ukibeba vitu kwa roho utakufa. If you carry things in your heart, you will die.
The reason for which you went to school and then gathered experience, that reason must be paid for.
All right.
Okay.
This level.
Shape up or ship out.
Levels don't change.
No. It's about shipping out.
You know my business partner here.
Shipping out.
Are we talking about the ship in the bathtub? Or
the ship man?
Emmanuel Talabu used to tell us a story of they were in school and they'd been told to write composition about a ship. His classmate raised a hand. Teacher, are you talking about a ship or a ship goat?
The Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation.
Good morning and welcome to Tuesday. All right, let's take a look at what's happening on the streets this morning. Traffic starting to build up and it's going to be a busy one. Schools are open and as a result of that, we're probably going to see more traffic than we have in a couple of weeks. So it's an eye on everything is what we're trying to keep this morning. If you're coming off of Jago Road going towards Landis and then on the Kamkunji roundabout, there's already some traffic here and it's already starting to build up on the Thika Superhighway as well. Not much coming off of Ngong Road into the CBD. Langata Road looks good for now. Even the Thika Superhighway looks okay for now, but let's see what happens as the morning picks up. We'll talk on SpiceFM KE on X, hashtag The Situation Room.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Okoh, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latiff, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is The Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
It is indeed the only way to start your day. It's 10 minutes after 6 o'clock on this 27th day of August. Yes, here we are. Into the second day of the week already. And before you know it, voila, it'll be Friday. And just getting into, the day, as it were. Good morning, Ken.
Good morning, dude.
Okay, you sound brighter than you said you were feeling.
Oh, man. When duty calls, you respond with everything you got.
Did you sleep well?
I did.
When you did?
I did. I did. I slept early for the first time. I was in bed by 12. Yeah. 12:30 I sleep.
That's early.
I've been awake. Yes, that's very early for me.
When do you normally sleep if 12 is early?
Oh, man. 1:32.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay,
I
but
have
then
to
you
cut
wake
sleep.
up at 8.
No. At 8, I'm always at work. I only need 4 hours of good sleep.
There's a pertinent question you need to ask.
No, don't. Okay. Don't. I saw his face.
I know where CT was going.
Yes, that's why I said don't.
Okay, so let's just leave it there and say good morning to you, CT.
Hi.
Oh, wow, hi. How are you doing?
Fine.
Very good to see you this morning.
Asante sana.
The cold is doing a number on people.
Man, I was doing very well before you mentioned the cold.
Just when you thought it was getting warmer.
Man.
Then now we've been plunged into the abyss of icicles.
It is actually very cold.
It is actually quite cold. It's much colder than it was probably in the beginning of the month. We thought that it was going to get warmer, but I think Met told us that we're going to see colder conditions towards the end of August.
Met said.
Yes, they did.
Met said the weather is going to be cold.
They did.
And they also said climate is also going to be cold.
They said the climate will be cold.
Yes.
All right. Well, it is cold. I'm glad everybody's doing okay. And let's see how we can warm things up in the room this morning. In the Situation Room, a number of conversations that we will be having today. Take a quick look at those. And look, schools are open. Yeah. Post-primary school teachers, we don't know what's happening. Well, actually, no, we do. The strike is on. And what will be happening in schools, where students are reporting from yesterday and today, is now what we don't know will happen. But let's look at some conversations that we will be having this morning. At 7 a.m., we'll be talking about the future of the 2010 Constitution. Of course, you know that we're getting towards the anniversary of the promulgation of the Constitution, which took place in 2010. And so there's a lot of constitutional talk around at the moment. And in terms of its implementation and what needs to happen to make sure that all the laws that are set out as the supreme law for the nation are actually being done. Our guest this at 7 a.m. will be Oliver Waindi, and we'll be talking about the future of the 2010 Constitution. That'll be followed by a conversation that we will have at 8 a.m. The Finance Act 2023, a burden or goodwill? What does it mean? that the courts, exactly coming off a conversation that we had last week, what does it actually mean when we're talking about 2023 Finance Act and bringing that back in? Finally, at 9 o'clock, we'll have a conversation about how Kenya can take advantage of global labor market even through these tough economic times. And Leban Njuguna, who is the founder and CEO of Zaibuni Specialty Coffee, will be with us at 9 a.m. So, all right, quite a number of conversations that we'll have today. Even as we do that, welcome to all of you. Our live streams are up on YouTube, Facebook, X, and TikTok. Take a look at the weather and come back and say hello to everybody.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
You know that feeling where there's like a pain at the back of your head? What? You almost want to... But what about that moment when the pain finally starts to fade away? That moment when you go back to ordinary, to being your best self again. And it feels so good.
Get effective release from strong pain with Panadol Extra. Panadol. Release starts here. If symptoms persist, seek medical advice. Always read label before use.
The weather with SpiceFM.
Cloudy conditions in Nairobi this morning at 14 degrees. We'll see highs of 23 and highs of 24. In a clear Nakuru at 13. It's cloudy at 15 in Nyeri with highs of 22 and going to highs of 23. It's currently clear at 13 in Eldoret. Mombasa at 24 will be partly cloudy through highs of 29 and lows of 23. While Malindi cloudy at 24 will go to highs of 29. It's 18 and clear in Kisumu with highs of 30, while Kakamega will go to highs of 29, where it's clear at 16, down to lows of 15. Kampala cloudy at 18, we'll see highs of 29 and lows of 17, while Dar es Salaam cloudy at 22 will go to highs of 29. Johannesburg cloudy at 13 will go to highs of 27, and at 25 Mogadishu it will be sunny through Tuesday with highs of 29, 13 and cloudy in Addis Ababa with highs of 20, and we're looking into a partly cloudy Lagos at 25 with highs of 29. It's 20 and clear in Kinshasa with highs of 33, and looking into a sunny Beijing at Tuesday afternoon with highs of 31 and lows of 19. It's cloudy at 13 in Paris with highs of 28, while London at 16 is cloudy, we'll see highs of 25, and New York Monday night is clear at 22. Coming into Tuesday, we'll see highs of 29 and lows of 20.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
Okay, people are in the room this morning. We can see you all already. Don Sabwa, do Kenyans have a 4 billion shilling forensic lab? They do.
Yeah, at the DCI headquarters. Yes.
Yes, there was something about that. There was some hullabaloo about whether it's being used. Was it necessary?
I think it's being used. It was launched by President Kenyatta.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's being used.
There was a story about that last week and about how it seems to be a project that was not efficient. Something like that. And I think this is where this is coming from.
In this country, stories abound.
This is Don's way of saying good morning, just in case you're wondering. So, Ivan Sintabo says good morning. Cecilia Ongwenyi says good morning as well. Good morning, Spice family. Jeffrey Mogaka is also tuned in and says good morning, good people. And salamu kwa nyaboke. Amepokea kabisa. George Mutoro says good morning, tuned in. Extend my regards to the teachers and support staff. My dear, where are they? Okay, good morning, big team Situation Room. Good to have you here. Good morning, Spice is tuned in from Roiro is Jaber Asami. Blue says good morning, tuned in, and happy Tuesday. Vesh Musanga, we see you. Moses Mwangi also tuned in this morning. Desmond Otis is tuned in and says good morning to everybody. A hunter who comes home with a goat is a thief. Okay. Margaret Wanjohi says happy Katiba Day. Yes, it is actually today. Hi, Spice team and the family. Good morning, and the family in the comment section. Carol and to love. Good morning to you. My prince says today we are launching Odinga signature for AUC. Billions will be spent in traveling, posters and reflectors for borders and Mtu Amboga.
I'm going to ask when we get into the how does this thing work?
What exactly?
And do we need local audience for this?
That's what I'm wondering.
It's being launched in Kenya for what?
What is it? Are we voting?
Do you need signatures to take to the committee? In Addis?
I think guys are just being creative with this because we don't need. No Kenyan is going to vote. Only President Ruto is going to vote.
Yeah.
The issue here is the support of other African countries.
It's the wrong audience, if you ask me.
The person who came up with that doesn't think so.
I think he's just being creative, like every Kenyan with this, because now today is the big day.
So let's see.
For Raila Odinga.
It is. Okay, so
you doubt that?
It's okay. Everybody's saying good morning. Judy Wangari says good morning. All the people who make it possible for us to enjoy this fantastic show. Thank you so much for being on board. You are one of them as well. George Okoh is tuned in. Chris Maora says good morning. And Gypsy says good morning. He's greeting everybody else in the comment section. Bernardo Kello is also here. AMI says, good morning, my people. The Chief General is here. Good morning, everybody. Morgan, we see you. Leshan, we see you. And Joy Luyegu is also here, everybody. Good morning. And Karibuni Sana. All right. Of oceans and coastlines where our problems are from this week, CT?
Yes, and the Maghreb. I did mention yesterday that the People's Republic of Algeria is a country in the Maghreb region of North Africa. Now, I did promise that I'll tell you a little bit about the Maghreb. The interpretation and the meaning, well, it's not diverse, but let me give you two opinions on this particular matter. There are those who call it the island of the West, or there are some who call it the land between the sea and the sand of the Sahara.
Wow.
Okay? Now, the Maghreb covers several countries, Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia, and Libya. It's inhabited by two groups of people. One, they are the indigenous. In English, we say they are the Berber, but if you look at them, it's Berber.
Berber. Yeah, Berber.
They are the distinct ethnic groups who actually inhabit these countries that I've mentioned, and yet they're a minority. The other group are the Arabs, okay? It is for that reason that you will find that the language that is spoken is Algerian Arabic. That is like what you call the national vernacular. Okay? See, like our national vernacular is Kiswahili. National vernacular indeed. But they also speak English and French. All right? Right. The government is what you call a unitary semi-presidential republic.
That makes me laugh because we said semi-presidential one day and somebody said, what does that mean? You only have a president half the time?
Well, actually, no. Presidential as opposed to parliamentary.
Yes. So this is right in the middle.
Yes, it's in the middle.
It's right in the middle.
Yes, because if you look at even the composition of the top leadership, you'll find there's a president. He's called Abdelmajid Tebboune. And then there's a prime minister called Nadir Labaurik. Then you have a council president.
Okay.
Yes, called Saleh Goudijil. Then you have an assembly president called Ibrahim Bugali.
So the head of state is different from the head of government.
Yes. And then there are presidents here. Okay? There's a council president.
What do they do?
What happens in such nations, you'll find that aside from parliament, there's a council that is also is like a council of elders. There are those who argue that in some places is what would qualify as an upper house. Okay.
Okay.
Yes, but so there's a guy whose head is called president. Okay. Then there's another guy who heads the assembly is also called president.
Okay.
So there are presidents. There are three presidents and one prime minister. Another proverb. There is an excess of familiarity at the root of all hostility.
Excess or access?
Okay, let me rejig my English. There is an excess of
excess,
yes, not access.
Okay.
Access is entry.
Yeah, but both could work actually.
There is an excess. This one is excess.
Okay.
Of familiarity at the root of all hostility. It is difficult to be hostile towards someone you don't know.
This is true.
Very difficult.
So you must, by the time you're hostile to somebody,
There's an element
close at home.
Yes.
You've been in constant contacts.
There's an element of proximity
with them. It's kind of like there's a thin line between love and hate. Yeah.
Or contempt breeds familiarity.
Familiarity breeds contempt.
Oh, it's the other way.
No. I like the way you put it.
Contempt breeds familiarity.
Actually, if you think about it, it's probably true.
Yes, you put it well. Put it very, very well. So this is what the
Berbers.
Peoples.
Berbers.
Berbers.
Okay. Let's take a look at the headlines today. On the front page of the Standard, man of the moment. And there is a picture of Raila Odinga in blue. President William Ruto today is expected to officially launch Raila Odinga's AUC bid at State House, with at least 4 African presidents expected to attend. Is it serious? Something like that. This marks a significant milestone in the political life of Raila as it cements his stature as an African statesman. So, State House is going to pull out all the ribbons and trimmings. It's a thing. And President Ruto said, we have an opportunity to produce the next AUC chairman, and we must work together because it is not a position that belongs to a person, but a collective responsibility. While all that is going on, the picture just below that for me is actually the state of the nation, where a border rider is carrying suitcases, a mother and her child, her son, with all their belongings for school at least, trying to get back. And the headline is, anxiety as learners troop back to school. A student is accompanied by his parent, returns to school in Eldoret yesterday. Parents in many parts of the country looking for affordable transport back to school. Most students complained of the rise in bus fare, which they claimed had doubled or tripled. With secondary school teachers on strike, many were uncertain of what is expected in schools. Other headlines on the Standard this morning, before we look into that education one. More Kenyans turn to digital lenders to cope, to get by, to eat on a daily basis, to be able to move from point A to point B. Because you can't afford it, you need to borrow it. That's not a good thing. What poor credit score means to you, that's also being carried there. Remember the football manager Sven-Göran Eriksson? He coached England from 2001 to 2006. He died yesterday at the age of 76 after a battle with pancreatic cancer.
Oh dear.
Ken, what do you have on the Nation headlines?
Oh, the Nation standoff. It's about the teachers. Primary schools record low turnout even after NAT cancelled strike. I think there was no confidence with the teachers. So the headline is a big word, standoff, just standoff. A 5-hour-long meeting between union leaders representing post-primary school teachers and government officials yesterday failed to unlock a stalemate, signaling possibility of confusion deepening today when most schools are scheduled to open. Yesterday, the first day of the third term, saw some high school tutors stage protests across the country. And there's a beautiful page of our teachers there lying on the tarmac. These are Kenya Union of Post-Primary School Teachers. And why Ruto Raila deal signal return of Pentagon? They're just reminding us the original ODM. Only Balala is missing in action.
Yeah.
And Koske and a few more people. But it looks like the Pentagon is reset once again. So the nation.
Plus ça change, plus c'est la même chose.
The nation is taking that as a headline. So the Blue Corner Mombasa Cement NSSF feud over 350 million shilling land. And for mechanic to police chief Edward Lagat, this guy has risen. He was a mechanic, now he is the chief of police. And finally, this is a story that I think we'll discuss in depth. NYS recruits be trained on how to handle firearms. So it's one of the courses that are being introduced. So you're not only going to be having the spade and the rake
it's not enough.
and the turungu. Now they're saying we need to teach you basic firearm handling techniques. I wonder what is in the president's mind. So yeah, that's what the nation has.
You can't help but wonder what and why
the president needs to teach them.
NYS, because there's quite a number of folks in the service. Why would they need to
By the
handle
way, you know, you don't
files?
need the parliament to deploy NYS in case of riot.
No. Your mind cannot help but wander in that direction. My goodness.
You know, this NYS saga, there's a tale to it. Huh? Remember once upon a time, when you finished what we called high school then, which was from 5 and 6, you went for NYS. I think
compulsory.
It was compulsory 8 months. It did very well until the University of Nairobi did something it does from time to time. Then they decided to go on strike for something or the other. I forget what it was this time around. And whereas before it was a running battle between the well-known riot police and the university students, and it would just sort of like flow into the town. Not just overflow, literally flow. So the story goes that this time around, the students all stood at attention information. And the police were advancing. The students did not move.
It's a real story.
Yes, it's a real story. And so when the police gave their orders, there was a student leader who also gave orders. Students, shun, rap, forward, march, ra, ra, ra. They had been taught all this.
Yeah.
You know, suddenly it occurred to someone that, wait a moment.
We've been training
what have we done?
Yeah. We've been training a parallel militia here.
Because now they're disciplined.
Yeah.
They're not running away. Okay? Lobby tear gas. Somebody catches tear gas, throws it back. Police flight, students after them. I'm simply saying that it is important. The National Youth Service and the thinking behind it was not just a noble idea, it is actually a very practical idea. But like all good ideas, the moment you politicize it, then the good will fly out of the window. Because when the motive and the reason behind it goes beyond what it was intended for, it must change and must morph with time. But when it has the slightest inkling that political whim is now seeking to influence it, then it may not turn out to be what it is that you thought it would.
Unfortunately.
Yes.
Can you tell us quickly what's on the front page of the Star?
Yes. I can actually do that, believe it or not. A Star. Top right-hand corner in teal, not green. Today is a free copy of the Star and MyGov. Today, free. Right. Fresh war in Mount Kenya as leaders take on Gachagua. Okay? The articles states that the deputy president is facing a Herculean task in consolidating his Mount Kenya backyard. A silent rebellion grows against his bid to lead the region. This is to be expected.
Okay.
When leadership, there will be a scramble. Jobs scramble looms as commission falls vacant. Apparently, it's falling vacant. Now, the people have even listed, okay? There's IPOA, there's IBC, there's NGEC, there's Ombudsman, there's SRC, all these commissions, position coming to an end. So if you want to apply, this is the time. Apply.
Why are you shouting? Oh, you're doing public announcement.
Yeah,
announcement.
Yes, if you want to apply.
Okay.
You think you are equal to the task, apply. Okay. HR consultant reaping big from onion farming. This is a story of the dynamic management practitioner who found success beyond the office, okay? This is someone who turned the passion into a thriving business in growing onions and watermelon. Guess where? In Migori.
Okay, excuse me.
My neighbors.
Do you know somebody from Migori?
Yes, but this one is not just Migori. It's Migori and Kajiado. My goodness, this is very good. Now, back in the middle of the paper,
wonderful.
Radical proposals include creation of Prime Minister's office, official leader of opposition. Ruto Raila deal to hasten law review. We are mingling and tingling with the constitution yet again. Bid rekindles memories of doomed building bridges initiative of ex-president. It's like everything that was rejected during the previous regime is now waking up and coming back, including the finance bill. That
exactly.
This is what we have in the
Sata.
Yes.
Voila. Let's take a break and see what's happening now with traffic on the roads. Everybody's bound to be back just because, things continually happen. But into the details of these stories, we'll come back and do them. Let's take a look at traffic and be back right after this. It is 6:33.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start.
Sugar and spice and everything nice. SpiceFM.
Spice up your life.
We already see it building up on the Thika Superhighway today, and then coming in from Survey, it is already chock-a-blocked, bumper to bumper. Beyond that, it's starting to trickle in, coming in from Kasarani through towards Garden City, and then out towards Survey. That's already happening. Haile Selassie is jam-packed. We know that there are a lot of students who are going back to school today, and that traffic continues, but we're looking at serious traffic on Haile Selassie in and outbound, and that's coming in from the Ngong Road side and then heading out towards a bus station. It's to be expected. Jogo Road is also pretty busy today. Let's watch out for that. And also coming in from Ngong Road, we're starting to see traffic build up. Southern Bypass, that's your go-to girl for the day. You want to escape some traffic, use the scenic route into the city. We're going to keep an eye on the Southern Bypass just in case. Also, we're going to keep an eye on the Eastern Bypass as there will be traffic through towards traffic hour. We already know this, but we want to keep things moving and we'll see about the best routes to use this morning. Help us out. Let's do this together. We'll speak SpiceFM KE on X. Hashtag the Situation Room.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
Okay, let's look into this education story. It is important. It continues to grip the nation. High school teachers down tools as primary records low turnout. So there was a meeting that was held yet again. Excuse me.
Bless you.
This frog in my throat at one time. All right. So TSC, Kupet, we know that at the end of Sunday, Not had said that they would go back to school, and Collins Oyu said, okay, everybody come back to, we spoke to the secretariat, come back. Kupet said, not us. We're not doing that. So even schools that opened yesterday, high school teachers then were not present. Now, it is confusing because it marked yesterday's schools reopening for the third term after teachers' unions gave conflicting calls on whether to proceed with the strike. Sharp divisions became evident between officials of the Kenya National Union of Teachers and the Kenya Post-Primary Education Teachers. While not members reported to the schools, their counterparts in Kupet began their strike to push for implementation of the 2021-2025 collective bargaining agreement, otherwise known as a CBA. According to the school calendar released by the Ministry of Education, Term 3, the final term of the academic year, will last 9 weeks from August 26th to October 25th, 2024. Now, the primary school education assessment, which is otherwise known as KEPSEA, and the intermediate level education assessment, KILEA, examinations are scheduled for October 28th to 31st. Now, the KCSE national exams will be held between November 4th and November 22nd, 2024. Now, a spot check in different parts of the country revealed paralysis in secondary schools as public primary schools reopened. In Nakuru County, Kupet officials vowed to stay away from school until their demands are met. The Union Secretary General Duncan Masharia regretted that the Government and Teacher Service Commission failed to heed their demands to review the CBA. They said, we have 420 schools in Nakuru that will not open following the strike. Parents understand our position. So parents said, okay, well, then they're keeping their children at home because they understand that they're on strike. In Naivasha and Gilgil, schools reported low turnout, with parents claiming they needed to be assured that the union had called off its national strike before they sent their children to school. According to Eskimos Kobia, the Secretary General of the National Parents Association, the education sector is in trouble due to the state's lack of commitment. He said that no school nationwide had received any penny from the government. Hold on. 21 point something billion shillings was the amount that we were told by Treasury was to be released, or that was actually released. But now what we are being told, but usually takes about a week for the money to actually reach where it's going, right? So probably by the end of this week, they would have received the money. But according to him, as of yesterday, the money had not gotten to school. So do you see? We're still dealing with a myriad of issues here. TSC government failing to sort things out. Capitation that was sent failing to reach schools yet. And today is Tuesday, the 27th of August. and there are just 9 weeks in this term. What on earth is going to happen? And here we are, yet another crazy situation.
Wow. It's all about the teachers. I think because you picked the teacher story on the front page of the Standard, perhaps we need to look at this issue of the National Youth Service recruits. Also the front page of the Daily Nation. I'm sure it features somewhere prominently also in the Standard. So the government intends to increase fast the number of recruits to about 20,000.
Okay.
The second plan with this is to get them armed or at least trained to handle firearms, right? So President Ruto, the picture is inspecting a guard of honor at the NYS recruit pass out parade in Gilgil yesterday. I thought these guys are being trained everywhere.
No,
Do they have a single training institution in Naivasha?
Gilgil.
Oh, okay.
In Gilgil?
Gilgil.
Okay, so 14,692 number of recruits who graduated yesterday, and they want to increase from that 15,000 rounded off to about 20,000 annually. Now, my question this morning, reading this story, is what could be the noble intention of training these young men and women to handle firearms?
Well, if you look at the model, this is the model that comes to mind of the US. There's something called the National Guard. Okay, it's not regular army, it's not police, it's not troopers, but they are normally called in when regular police service are not able to manage a situation. But it's not just what the army would do. They are supposed to help with difficult situations. You have a flood in areas of the US where you have a typhoon or a cyclone. The National Guard is called in when what you call the local enforcement are not able to sustain or to manage the situation. That is looking at it from the positive side. But the problem is that we're in Kenya. So even when something which may have very good intentions, our minds tend to drift. And why is because nobody has explained to us in detail why it is that they want to go into this detail that previously did not exist.
I smell a big fat rat.
You do, huh?
Yep.
And the question is, was it a roadside declaration of it was policy?
All right, since we're
jumping into the realm of speculation.
All right, has there been public participation?
I'm sorry, but what have we? Okay, if you just look at what we've seen NYS do, even over the last couple of years, we saw them get heavily involved because we can't get the picture out of our heads of former President Uhuru Kenyatta driving to Nyayo Stadium on a Sunday evening to inspect what was being done in preparation for the ceremony of the late President Daniel Arap Moi, right? Who was doing the refurbishment of Nyayo Stadium? NYS.
And they came in, remember?
Yeah, because there was some delay.
There's some fellow who had been given the work and they were doing the Kenyan thing, taking their time.
Yeah.
And even when they went to Kabarak, who was serving food, organizing, making sure everybody was all right? Even at Parliament buildings, who was ensuring that the lines...
Most government installations, you'll find national youth.
Exactly.
Yes.
So this is their job. This is what they do. There's no need for them to be armed, really, from what we've seen them doing in the recent past.
Unless it is explained perhaps to us why it is the issue of arming comes into being.
Do you see why I smell a rodent?
Probably it's just training. I mean, you can take basic training on firearms.
Yes.
So I think they're just talking about training.
Okay, so it's just training, but not that they will arm them? Not that they will arm them.
Train them. Remember,
train them.
We do have somewhere a place called Manyani. It's a training camp. In the days when we had district officers, we still have chiefs and the like. It's a special training camp where you are trained to handle firearms. Okay? So you know. Okay, beyond knowing, this is a handgun.
So what do you do with it?
Yes,
what do you do with the knowledge?
You are given practical knowledge on how to use it.
For what reason?
In the event
that what?
There is a catastrophe.
But you have police.
You need guns.
You have APs.
No.
You have armies. You have Recce squad. You have anti-terror police unit.
Those are policemen. They're just specialized units within the police force. I do not know the details of why this issue of training them is creating such a big hoo-ha.
You know why?
Yes.
We've just come off the back of month-long protests.
Yes.
Where it would appear as though that whole threat was uncontainable and that you needed people that you could deploy in a particular area 24 hours a day, wake up from your sleep in the middle of it and say, guys, go. So once you do that, once you have that in your head, and then you hear something like this, the natural inclination for you is to put 1 + 1 and say, why out of the blue? How long has NYS been in existence in Kenya?
Hey, all our lives.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then it is now in 2024 that you have decided that you want to train them how to firearm use.
It's upping there. You know, up.
But City, I need to ask this. The policemen and all these armed forces, don't they require training?
They have training.
To contain yourself, to control yourself when you're holding the gun.
They do. In fact,
do NYS get the similar or near training?
I don't know.
Before they get to handle firearms.
I don't know. You to actually even own a firearm, you need to be trained, because you could actually end up harming yourself.
Exactly. That's
okay.
What, yeah.
You actually have to be trained, not just in the use of it, but also in keeping it.
And the discipline in having a firearm.
Yes. Remember, the vast majority of policemen and women that we see are not armed. They're not armed. They just have a tranchette, or they have this hoe handle that they walk around with.
Okay.
Yes.
It's called a baton.
It's called a baton.
The baton's a short one. There's the long one.
Okay, a longer baton.
Yeah, a longer one, which they use for pointing at they point at your face, and you know harm is coming your way. No, look, again, this is what happens when we hear of something, but it isn't accompanied by the logic and the reasoning behind.
So we get to speculate.
Well, but that's what happens when you don't give details. You let your imagination roam.
You leave a hole, and then we're going to naturally fill it up.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Let me move on. I see time. Let me do some little politics. It's also a story that is splashed in front page of The Nation, why Raila as deal signal return of the Pentagon. So the two and 3 others worked together in the 2007 election. I remember there's a time he did a trip, I think, to Nyanza. During that, the last day, he actually said, hii kitu tulikuwa tunatafuta pamoja.
Yes,
kama baba alipata na mimi hakupata na mimi nimepata, si tumepata wote. Yeah. ODM. So President Ruto has signaled the possible coalition with the ODM leader Raila Odinga. They've denied this. The sentiments in Kakamega on Saturday that his broad-based government that now includes former ODM party officials is not a short-term venture have caused speculation on a possible working arrangement with Mr. Odinga. So Pentagon had himself, Musalia Mudavadi, and they're all there. So the Prime Cabinet Secretary Musalia Mudavadi is to oversee Mr. Odinga's campaign for the chairmanship. They're launching it today. I hear they're merging the secretariats, the private one for Raila Odinga and the government one. And I think the government is injecting some public money into it.
There's money.
But how do you campaign without money? How do you do all those trips?
So there's money.
There is money in this campaign. I'll bring you a reflection jacket. Written Raila for AUC.
You know why I'm asking if there's money, eh?
Yeah.
So you know why?
Oh, yes, I know why. Because our teachers are in the street.
Hey.
And our doctor is soon going to the street.
My goodness.
Oh, you're thinking doctors. My friend, what about university staff?
Civil servants.
University staff? In Eldoret, those fellows have already said them they're not working. So what we have before us is an impending doom. Now here I'm being a bit dramatic, but when you have very many sectors of this particular country or economy determining that they're downing their tools, it is not pleasant.
No, it isn't.
It isn't. What happened to the Matatu fellows? They had also said they're also going to go on strike.
They called it off yesterday. That's why they started transporting some students to school.
And well, for them, I think they have a clear understanding of what's what.
Okay.
Why do you want to down your tools at a time when the demand for your business is at its peak?
It's frustrations all around. Everything works for the bad
as opposed to the good.
Yes.
My goodness.
So the timing was good for them because then the parents are frustrated, students are frustrated, teachers are frustrated, everyone is frustrated.
Yeah, ain't nobody going anywhere anyway. So, look, we might as well just sit down. CT?
I am looking at the Star. There's a story here. Bitter pill to swallow. New gizmos place men at center of birth control. This is... You know, it is that the Star has a bang in the middle of the paper headline, and then
this
they have
is a literal one.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Then they have a picture. Usually, it's of people. This time, it isn't a picture of people. These are pictures of birth control methods. Okay, what we have now: condoms, something called vasectomy, where they snip something there, and so that after you've been snipped, you can snap. Then there is
did not. Okay.
Then there's the withdrawal symptom. This one, I don't know how it works. Then there's the abstinence. That one's a tall order. Now, the hormonal methods are as follows. There's injection. Gel applied to skin. Did you know that gel just applied to skin? And it's a birth control method. Can you imagine?
No.
Okay. Then there's the oral pill. Then there's a skin patch. These stories are on page 4 and 5. Now, why am I talking about this? Okay, there's a story. There was a research that was conducted. Okay, and one of the things that they found that 52% of the men who were in this research said they were open to try a novel male contraceptive in the first year of availability. Their primary concern was not the side effects, but the method of application. More than half the women in this study, 58%, said they would trust that their men were using contraception.
They would trust?
They would trust.
Okay.
And the remainder said they would continue with their female contraception. The research, this was the title of the research, Assessment of Demand for Male Contraceptives, a multi-country study. It was conducted in 2021 and 2022 by researchers from India, South Africa, and Turkey. Okay? Our findings indicate a very high level of interest in male contraceptives among men across all surveyed countries, particularly ongoing those who are not currently using any modern method. Okay? This story is an interesting one, and one that I will be looking into in the coming days, that we can talk a little bit more about how this thing actually works. Because contraception for the longest time has always been a subject and a domain whose main target was women.
Okay.
Now the conversation has changed. We're saying, okay, men also, beyond using condoms and other methods which don't work very well for many African men, there are new methods that are in the offing.
That's very interesting. And puts them at the center, men now at the center of the responsibility.
Yes. So it's a question of the question that is asked: is the lady on birth control? The man, are you on birth control? Imagine that change of conversation.
It would be crazy.
It'll be very interesting, because now the uptake, when these methods are readily available, I'd like to see the findings of how the uptake has been.
Me too.
Yes, because when people are asked a hypothetical question, they'll respond in one way. When it comes to actually utilizing the product, we may find it is not quite the same as the responses we got. Yes.
Okay. There's a story here. It's really interesting. It's a sensitive one. It's evidence on trial. The line between rape and consent. It's carried in the Standard. Now, July 1st, 2021, Leah, whose name has been concealed, of course, for protection, had a male primary school friend visit her house. She cooked beef and rice, and they enjoyed wine. Since the visitor could not leave owing to the COVID-19 pandemic, she gave him a place to sleep. Now, Layla told the court that he raped her in the middle of the night. Yesterday, Constitutional Court Judge Lawrence Mugambi dismissed her case, ending yet another chapter of her 3-year trial. And now you ask why. She had been before the police and then to the magistrate's court for a criminal trial, and they all did not side with her. Her credibility was at stake as she was on trial. According to Justice Mugambi, the affidavits could not be enough evidence to decide on either side of the story. The Petitioners' Council opted for an affidavit evidence which is limiting in hotly contested case such as the one before the court. The court is left in limbo with two conflicting positions and is thus unable, without the benefit of cross-examination, to resolve the credibility question. Mugambi on Monday observed that the magistrate's court acquitted the person she accused of rape. According to him, there was nothing wrong with interrogating her conduct around the man to determine she had consented, whether she had consented. The judge said her conduct with the man before, during, and after the incident had to be considered alongside what she had stated to determine whether she had consented. Now, this is big because historically, somebody would be able to come and say, I was raped. And whether you say, did you consent, and you say I didn't consent, usually the case 100% would go the way of the person who was the complainant. All right. But now Justice Mugambi is saying, hold on a minute. What happened in that scenario? You've already admitted to inviting him to your home. You cooked him a meal. And then now later on in the middle of it, you say he raped you. Now, what Mugambi is saying, which is rarely done, is that it takes into consideration the circumstances around what happened before this alleged rape. And he's saying, based on that, this case was then dismissed.
But let me ask the question. Are you saying, or is it a magistrate or a judge?
This is a judge.
Okay, is the judge telling us that when a lady invites a gentleman for a meal, somebody they're acquainted with, that ostensibly the visit is supposed to end up with some sexual encounter? Is that what he's suggesting?
Not necessarily, but in the event that you accuse this gentleman of rape, what Justice Mugambi is saying now is that we will have to put her conduct prior to this incident on trial as well.
Okay, when you say her conduct, what do we mean?
According to him, there's nothing wrong with interrogating her conduct around the man to determine whether she actually had consented. The judge said that her conduct with the man before, during, and after the incident had to be considered alongside what she had stated to determine whether indeed she had consented. The conduct was relevant because the issue here was about belief in concept whose decision cannot be reached without analyzing a combination of factors. The conduct of both the petitioner and the first respondent was relevant, even for the purposes of assessing this credibility, so as to reduce the risk of made-up charges and unfair prosecution. Yeah, so he's saying, no, you can't just say he raped her in the middle of the night. What led to that?
But you see, this is splitting hairs. For example, it's telling us that if a girl is dressed in a certain way, then we'll have to interrogate from that point.
Her conduct.
How was she dressed? How is she behaving? You know, when issues of rape came up pre this, it was about direct consent.
Yes.
There is no implied consent. It has to be explicit consent.
Yes or no.
So, yes. So here, I'm even looking at Lala's claims here. One, she went to the police station. She was ridiculed for being raped. I think she went to the normal counter.
Yes.
Not the gender one. Then the officers interrogated her in the presence of other people. They implied she consented. She had to follow up with the police 10 times to begin that investigation. Apart from that, the officers demanded money, kawaida, to trace the suspect. And even after demanding money, she says she had to bait the guy to be arrested by the police. But I think what Justice Mugambi is very rational. There's so many claims of rape. So I think he put a lot of considerations into this.
Yeah.
But still, it opens now the Pandora box, because there's a lot of things you can say. If you have to interrogate the acts of the lady beforehand, there's a lot of things. Oh, she was dressed indecently. In whose eyes?
Whose definition is indecent?
Indecent.
Exactly.
Yeah, that is what they're saying here.
Or some nonsense
because
where
you came to my house, that was consent.
Yeah.
Oh, that was implied consent.
You cooked me a meal.
That is implied consent. How?
You even gave me a place to sleep.
Yeah, because it's COVID-19 and I'm thinking you're going to be arrested.
Look at the circumstances. Had there been no COVID-19, there would have been no curfew.
So the fella would have gone home.
Would have gone home.
Precisely.
Yeah.
So we are saying her hospitality, from what we hear, is now being questioned.
But you don't give anybody a place to sleep.
But this is a friend.
Exactly. So he knew this guy. That's
Yes,
why
she did.
She even cooked a meal for him.
Yes, she did.
I mean, the circumstances.
All right. If I go and eat in a restaurant tonight.
Okay, here we go.
That's how far you've gone.
No, you see, the background of rape cases in this country, unfortunately, there's always the narrative that the victim was to blame.
Yes.
Yeah.
You were out at night.
Yes.
You dressed indecently.
And
You were where you were not supposed to be.
What do you mean?
How?
So the discussion around what the pertinent issue is completely lost in this discussion. Why would somebody go to all this bother? The number of times she went to the police station.
Yeah. If she consented.
Or let's take this extreme view, there was consent and then she changed her mind. Okay, so what brought that about?
Why did she change her mind?
Yes. The number of visits and the tenacity tells you this person was determined. So something went wrong. So what is it that went wrong? Why doubt? Because the logic behind it makes perfect sense. As an officer of the court, I think it's incumbent upon the judge to do exactly what they did. But we come from a country where, unfortunately, anytime and in most cases when we hear about rape, the blame is placed upon the victim.
Very unfortunate.
It is. Yeah, somebody's putting a comment there saying that we forgot about the wine that was mentioned. So somebody was inebriated here, but still, I'm sorry, but there's very little justification. It's not justified at all.
Can't justify that.
It's an interesting one, and whether it's going to set precedent for future cases, then really it's something to be looked into. All right, we're coming to the top of the hour, and we'll be having more conversations as we get into it. That's what's been coming in the papers. It's Kenya's biggest conversation, The Situation Room, on this Tuesday, the 27th of August. Good morning. It's 7 a.m.
Spice up your life.
It's now 7 a.m. Get effective relief from strong pain with Panadol Extra. Panadol. Relief starts here.
Good morning, this is the News Wire. I'm Leo Ubaga. Today marks a significant juncture for the African Union Commission chairperson contender Raila Odinga as President William Ruto formally unveiled his candidature. Presidents and officials from the East African region are expected to attend the launch at State House, Nairobi this morning. They include Yoweri Museveni of Uganda, Samia Suluhu, Tanzania, Salva Kiir, South Sudan, Hassan Sheikh Mahmoud of Somalia, as well as representatives from Rwanda and Burundi. Foreign Affairs Cabinet Secretary Musalia Mudavadi has reiterated that Kenya will make every effort to ensure that Raila takes the post.
He'll be announcing not just to the Kenyan people, but to the continent and to the international community at large that Kenya has officially endorsed the candidature of Raila Amolo Odinga. Naturally, because it calls for foreign engagements, then the Ministry of Foreign Affairs must be very pivotal in undertaking this task.
At the same time, Foreign Affairs PS Korir Singhoe said that moving forward as the campaign secretariat, they'll be responsible for drafting all necessary briefs for the candidate, producing campaign materials and arranging for a public debate to be broadcast live across Africa.
In Mr. Odinga, Kenya has a candidate who is an accomplished political player, a candidate who is a statesman. We are not leaving anything to chance. We think that this is such an important position, the position to lead the African Union at a pivotal time in world politics and world governance.
Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua has asked the governors to collaborate with the national government on the measures that will be taken to support alcohol and drug addicts, addressing the 24th meeting of the Intergovernmental Budget and Economic Council (IBEC). Gachagua called on governors to oversee the construction of rehabilitation centres as well as work with NACADA.
Envisions national level licensing for alcoholic drinks and drugs, with revenue going to counties and relevant agencies. We continue to urge counties to work with other national government agencies in establishing rehabilitation units in level 3 to 5 hospitals to assist those affected by the illicit alcohol and drug abuse. I'll be engaging the COG Committee on Legal Matters on this aspect, where we are urging counties to consider agreeing that NACADA takes over licensing while the counties take the revenue. And this, in our view, will free governors from being held hostage by traders and bar operators.
And finally, as the Kenya Union of Post-Primary Teachers strike enters day 2, they've continued blaming the Teachers Service Commission for failing to meet their demands. Secretary General Akela Misiri says despite holding several meetings with the government, there is not a single demand from their CBA that has been addressed.
Strike is on, and I hope we are only emphasize that they must do so with a lot of calmness.
So we are prepared for the government. If they want to protract, we are ready. If they want us to settle down and agree on issues that we have raised, we are ready.
We are going to occupy those schools. We are impoverished. The pay is not commensurate with the work we do. TSC must come up. The government must come up and pay teachers worth what they are doing to students.
And meanwhile, Education CS Julius Ogamba has urged KUPPET teachers to call off their strike as it will affect the academic calendar. Ogamba urged the striking teachers to be patient with the government as it gradually addresses their concerns.
I therefore call upon the Union of Post-Primary Education Teachers, KUPPET, to review their stance and to call off their strike. The government has demonstrated goodwill and readiness to address all the issues.
We have done our part of the bargain as government, and we are asking our colleagues in KUPPET, and I thank our colleagues in our primary sector for appreciating the fact that this is time.
That's the News Wire. I'm Leah Ubaga.
SpiceFM, Nakuru.
Taking a look into the city this morning, traffic on Haile Selassie is busy. It looks like it's going to be like this for some time. Also, Landis is busy inbound. Folks are looking for all kinds of transport to get them where they're going around the country this morning. Also on Jogoo Road, heavy inbound traffic. Manyanja Road is also spilling over to Jogoo Road, and the Thika Superhighway is now starting to pack up as you're coming in from Garden City, crossing over to the Allsops Junction. Survey is where you're going to find the most of the traffic this morning, and it has also built up on Kiambu Road today. Very, very busy traffic. Also, let's look at the northern bypass. Nothing much happening here, at least not for now. That all seems to be flowing freely without an issue whatsoever. All right, a quick look at the eastern bypass. A little bit of traffic then touching right around that Embakasi junction and then heading out to Outer Ring. We're keeping an eye on all of this. We're getting into traffic hours soon. We'll talk on SpiceFM KE on X, hashtag the Situation Room.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Okoh, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latiff, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
It's 7 after 7 o'clock this morning on the 27th of August, and already getting into it this morning. And even as we do, let's talk about education a little bit. CT, when you think about a university education, you think, okay, I want to be able to go outside the country. What are some of the things that you think, okay, even for people that you've heard, that you want to say, I'm not going to do this. I've heard stories, people have been scammed. What are some of the things that stop you from even going there and say, let's just stick with what we have?
What often happens is when people think of higher education, they think, okay, then after that education, then what? If you look at our education system and the way we are wired, it should lead to a job, quite simply. And if jobs don't come begging, then I ask the question, why do I bother in the first place? But then on the other hand, a lot of it has to do with how we structure our educational system, because education is not meant to open your eyes to getting a job. It's supposed to enable you to be able to understand how it is you can use your abilities to help yourself suitably engaged. But our system in this country doesn't quite do it.
Indeed.
Yes.
So when you're looking for it and you're saying, okay, I want to go abroad now and I want to see how I can explore horizons out there, most times you're not really sure, where do I start?
Actually, you are stumped.
Which country do I go to?
You're stumped. You wouldn't even know where to begin.
Exactly.
Yes.
Which course do I pick?
But there are people who know what to do.
There are. They're called Cradle. Now, Cradle has seen this problem in the market and they said, you know what? Most times people want to go out of the country, they don't even know where to begin. Which country will offer the course that you want? Which university probably is best suited for you? So they said, we're going to take all this information and we're going to use technology to match you with the proper university. We want to match you in the right country and probably in the proper course whereby it's going to help you to solve some of the things that you talk about, CT. And for them to attend to all these people at the same time, they said, you know what we're going to do? We are going to have the World Study Abroad Fair that will take place on the 31st of August. That's this Saturday. And they've said, universities from many different countries will be there. The UK, the US, Grenada, Cyprus, New Zealand, Ireland. The list goes on and on. So you can come in, talk to these guys because they will be there. You can apply for admission on the spot. You can apply for scholarships right there. You can have a visa consultation and also look for accommodation and housing. You would go at 11 o'clock and most probably leave at 4 with everything that you need intact. And they've said, come on down to the Gallant Mall on the 31st of August from 11 to 4 and get all of these things in line. And it works for you. All you need to do is register.
It's important.
www.cradle.com or call 0799 000 444. All right. We're getting into conversations for today. And our guest is here this morning. And we're going to be looking at it's Katiba Day, of course, looking at 14 years after the promulgation of the Constitution. And the future of the 2010 Constitution is what we're discussing this morning. And our guest, Oliver Waindi, who's the Executive Director of Uraia Trust, here this morning. Oliver, good morning.
Morning to you.
Karibu sana.
Thank you very much.
A lot to discuss 14 years after the promulgation. Today is Katiba Day. Many questions being asked. But before we get into it, since you're here in the hot seat to talk about such things, let's tell you today's proverb. CT has these proverbs. He'll let you know what that is. And then you can tell us what it means to you, how you would interpret it. Is that all right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Our proverbs for the whole of this week come from the People's Republic of Algeria. Not just republic, People's Republic. The proverb, there is an excess of familiarity at the root of all hostility.
Absolutely. I mean, it's basically what we want to discuss this morning, because when you're familiar to somebody, the most likely person to take advantage of you is normally the person that is very familiar to you. And that is possibly what we want to look at this morning, because I think the 54 million Kenyans in this republic probably have been taken advantage of by people that they're very familiar with. So I think it's really spot on. So it's not only Algerian. I think it's rooted in Algeria, but I think it's a very Kenyan scenario indeed. Yeah,
indeed. Okay, interesting. So here we are, 14 years after the promulgation of the Constitution 2010. And there are many questions already. Full implementation of the Constitution, is it even possible? Or are we saying, have we even started to abide by the tenets of the Constitution and seen that working through Kenya? Even as we go into some specific questions and then point in some areas, an overview of how Kenya has done with its most recent Constitution. It's 14 years down the line. Today was the day when that huge flag was hoisted, right, over Uhuru Park. And they said this is the supreme law now, and this is how Kenya will be governed. How has Kenya done under that constitution, in your opinion, Oliver, in the last 14 years?
Thank you very much. Well, I don't think we should just look at it exclusively in the context of 14 years per se, but we can stretch history back to where we've come from. And indeed, when you look at it from the history of this country, where we were until that wonderful day on 27th of August 2010, again to date, then you will see the progress we've made as a country. It is very easy to be clouded and to be blinded by the challenges we have currently and think that probably we've not made any progress. However, if you look at it where we were, for those who were there in the 1960s, like you, and those who grew up in the 70s and 80s, then you do understand that the terrain was much rougher for Kenyans when it comes to constitutionalism. And because of the setbacks that we had as a country, then, of course, we did what we did in the 2000s, and we got our constitution in 2010. Now, from 2010, of course, we got this wonderful constitution, which has really been globally acclaimed. The challenge, of course, we have is then how have we gone insofar as the implementation of the same is concerned. And indeed, I must say that the promise that we had with the Constitution and the performance that we've had, the gap is absolutely glaring, and that's what we ought to address as a country. Yes.
You know, when you say that, as you're speaking, when you talk about the 60s, you'll be surprised at where my mind went to. I actually began my early schooling in my neck of the woods, the original place we came from. It's a place called Katolo. It's in a place called Nyando. And I went to a primary school called Yogo Primary School. Now, Yogo Primary School, there were two sessions. There are those who went to school in the morning, then there are those who went to school in the afternoon. I was the group of people who went to school in the afternoon. And the reason was there were only two classes. And some people learned under a tree. And we walked to school barefooted. And I was thinking, my parents had bought us shoes, my sister and I, but we couldn't wear it because some of our teachers didn't have shoes. Okay? Now, I was thinking of relatives who wore shoes for the first time when they were in their adolescence, and the shoes gave them a problem because their feet had been accustomed to walking without shoes. And this constitution and applying it to our life reminds me of that. When you've been used to doing things the way we were socialized, and then you bring in this new thing which tries to now make lives better, the shoe is supposed to protect your foot. But you're used to walking without shoes. So the shoes now, as you put them on, become a problem instead of being what it is. So as you said that, that's what came to my mind. Shoes for the first time in your adolescence, when you haven't been wearing it, and the process of getting your feet used to wearing the shoes. That, in my opinion, is the analogy I can draw with the Constitution and how we Kenyans are.
Absolutely. What you're trying to say is that probably the speed with which you were expecting to implement it to bring the change that, like you're saying it, we were walking barefoot until 27th of August. All of a sudden we get these shoes. And then we find it too beautiful, too comfortable. And like you're putting it rightly, in the 60s then you even had fear of actually putting on that shoes. Probably that's what we've experienced as a country, because we had schedules, we had everything, and our expectation was that by now would have made extremely big strides in so far as the implementation is concerned. Now, the fact that that has not been the case, I don't know if it's by design or it's just by some default, but we find ourselves here, and that is what we need to interrogate as a generation, as a country, at such a time like this.
Is there a need to celebrate this day?
Absolutely, absolutely. Remember, the challenges we are experiencing are very teething, and the sentiment on the ground, as they say, is that the Kenyan people on the ground are really enthusiastic about this constitution. That alone is a reason to celebrate it. Now, when we have people in power who are supposed to implement it and who are inherently declining to do what the constitution wants, they're the minority. And I think the majority ultimately will have the success over this constitution. So we've got every reason to celebrate it. And indeed, even with the challenges that we've had, it's important also to just celebrate the milestones that we've achieved. The devolution that we've had in this country, the freedom that we can even discuss this. Those are liberties that have been given to us by this constitution that we indeed need to celebrate. So we've got a lot of things to celebrate. However, we set the bar so high in terms of our expectation, and the fact that we've not necessarily achieved the high expectation that we wanted with this constitution, that is where the frustration comes in.
Let me ask you.
Yeah.
Is it not a good thing to set a high bar?
It is absolutely a very, very good thing.
Yes.
But I think the infrastructure must allow you to achieve that high bar. But as it is right now, clearly, that has not been the case in terms of putting structures to achieve that high bar success. And that is what is bothering us. First, as a sector, second, as a country, third, as a generation, people are getting almost discouraged, if I may use the more diplomatic word, why we can't be what we ought to be by 2024.
But did we understand, or did somebody who probably understands these things better give us a roadmap and tell us what it is that we were going to undergo before we actually achieve what was and still is aspirational?
Well, let me just say that change is not so easy to get in anything, whether it's at a personal level, institutional level, country level, or even generational level. Change is a very, very hard thing to do. Good or bad, change is a very difficult thing to achieve because you got status quo and you got people who have benefited from status quo, and therefore they always want to perpetuate the same. And therefore, the real challenge we have right now is the desire for the majority of Kenyans to get this thing implemented and to get a better life. And there are people who find that extremely difficult because when you get a liberated people who can have a better say in a better life, then they want to be very easy to control in terms of politics. And I think that is where the dilemma is. It's a huge conundrum as a country that we're facing right now. Those who are holding on to the status quo and don't want to have full implementation of this constitution, and the desire of the 54 million of us in this territory called Kenya to get to implement this constitution. That is the conundrum.
Well, let me ask you this question.
Yeah.
Today I'm talking a great deal because this thing is important to me. There's a disconnect between what we have on paper and what is promised and getting the people to actually believe that it is possible for it to happen. Because sometimes the pushback is not visible. There is a term that is used by psychologists. They call it a passive-aggressive approach to something. Somebody says yes, but they're not moving. Said yes, I am coming, but they haven't moved an inch. When you have lofty ideas like the ones we have in our constitution, and yet people have what we call their lived reality, to connect the two sometimes is a bit of a problem because people tend to rely on what they're used to, what they're accustomed to seeing. They're comfortable with it. Even if it is something that isn't necessarily good for them, they're comfortable with it. So when you want to move them from there, they're hesitant. They're not sure. But what I'm also not sure of is, one, do we know the efforts that must be made to get people to be sure, or at least begin that journey? Do we also know what it is that we need to do in minute details to begin this process so that people can actually see this change incrementally? I dare say we've seen change, but do we communicate that what we see and what we now take for granted is a change that we're talking about? It's just that it may not have come packaged the way we would have preferred it or wanted it to be packaged, and yet the change is actually with us, as you correctly put it. That we're having this discussion itself is a huge change.
Absolutely. You are right. Maybe it's the packaging, maybe it's the communication, but I think ultimately the reason I'm putting on this shirt today is because symbolically this is what we call in this country Wanjiko. And this actually means that everything that we do, the person that ought to understand, the person who ought to partake everything that we do as a country, and those who are privileged to be in positions of power and ensuring that the constitution is successfully implemented, is this person. So if you have an implementation that is not appreciated on the ground, then that implementation itself is faulty in a way. And so it doesn't matter whether it is well communicated or well packaged. Ultimately, and that's why we begin by talking about the sovereignty of the people of this republic. The central person to this is the citizen. Actually, that's where the word Uraia is coming from.
Yeah.
It's Uraia, it's the Raia who ought to actually partake of what everything is. So it's not about the presidency explaining to us what has been achieved in terms of it is the least of us who must understand that this thing has impacted him or her. If that is not the case, then there's a problem, either in the packaging, like you're saying, or in communicating that success or otherwise. Yeah.
So what are some of the activities that we see or that you've been involved in that would then point directly to ensuring that, number one, the citizen, even if it is at the very basic level, has understanding of what this constitution is and how you can then insist on the implementation of it by those who've been given the responsibility? How? What are some of the things that we see that gets us closer to that mark?
Well, let me just say, and Ken is a lawyer, he knows that better than me, that it is the responsibility of the government to actually carry out civic education. Civic education is basically educating the masses on their rights and responsibilities in this country. So it is the role of the government. However, we supplement it in our sector. So we actually carry out civic education, trying to help Kenyans understand what their rights are and indeed what their responsibilities are as well. Now, once a population is well educated on its rights and responsibilities, sooner or later they will start to do the right things, demand for their rights, but as well get accountable for the actions of demanding for the rights. So what we have seen, for example, of the past few months specifically, and indeed much longer before, we are seeing agitation. That in itself is a manifestation that Kenyans are getting aware of what their rights are. You have seen the Gen Zs from the 25th of June this year, and when they're arrested, they proudly display our constitution booklet and saying, no, this is not right according to the constitution. None of them is a lawyer. Because, again, we have to debunk this and demystify that the constitution is a legal document. This is a contract between those who are in leadership and the 54 million Kenyans.
Yes.
And we want it to be operationalized and be understood by the least of us. One of the challenges, again, that we've had over the past 14 years is the assumption that, only lawyers ought to understand this and then interpret it on our behalf. And we want to really make this simple, widespread, to permit every corner of this country, just asking people to be responsible citizens, upholding their rights, demanding what is rightfully theirs, but at the same time, carrying out their duties as responsible citizens of this country. Now, I am glad to say that we are gradually seeing that getting manifested in our country, both in terms of people partaking the processes that we have, even democratic processes. Okay, we've had issues of less and less people participating in election, which we're trying to address through civic education. But we are glad that more and more people are now getting bolder in demanding for what they think is their right. Now, we saw it in the town hall 2 days ago when university students were telling the president, no, we are not okay with this new university model. Now, I don't know the viability of that. All what I know is that when a young 22-year-old stands and tells the president, I disagree with you on that, that alone tells you that there is more awareness in terms of what people believe is the right. And that is what makes me happy as a person and makes me happy as a Kenyan, that we are getting a generation that can hold people accountable and can ask for what is rightfully theirs.
There have been some accusations that have come from government in terms of involvement by non-governmental organizations when it comes to some of the things that you talk about. Civic education, number one. And like you said, it's a purview of government. But then we've been filling the holes. But there seems to be wide gaping holes in terms of some of these things. So there has been direct accusation from government that, non-governmental organizations are poking their nose where it doesn't concern them. What's your take on that, and how ought it to be?
Well, like he said at the beginning, change is very hard to get. And when change is brought, it's going to cause a lot of disquiet and discomfort to those in power. That is not something that they would want to see. The sector that I work in is probably one of the most patriotic sector you can ever get, because all what we want is the best for this country. Nobody in his right senses would want to destroy a country that he is or she is in by God's own design. So, I mean, it would be very foolish of any of us to do that. We want the best for our country. But when we do that, the only way to do it is to make it very uncomfortable for people who don't want us to have a good country. And when you make it uncomfortable, and they have continuously benefited from the chaos and the ugly side of the implementation of this constitution, they will be in the forefront of saying that you are not necessarily doing what they want, which is what they want, not what the constitution wants and what the Kenyans want. So yes, I am aware that we have been accused variously of not necessarily being very patriotic and always dancing to the tune of the outsiders, which is really far-fetched. What we want and what we do is to ask Kenyans to be responsible citizens. And in Oraya, for example, which is the lead organization when it comes to civic education, the only gospel we preach is that we are all here by God's design. It is your responsibility to make Kenya better for all of us. So you've got rights that you must demand, but you also have got duties and responsibilities that you ought to uphold as citizens of this country. Now, if that is bad gospel, then I don't know what is. Yeah, because all what you're telling Kenyans is, please don't do anything that you're not supposed to do, but do everything that you ought to do.
Supposed to do.
Now, if that is agitation, well, I think I'm in the presence of a lawyer. You can tell me whether that is an agitation. But nobody in his right senses would be happy when status quo is getting changed.
Okay, let's take a break on that note and come back, and maybe the lawyer can contribute to that conversation and let us know what would that actually look like. It's Katiba Day today, the 27th of August, 14 years after the promulgation of the new constitution. Is it still new? Can we still say it's new 14 years down the line? Or most recent constitution? Oliver Waindi is the executive director of Uraia Trust, and we're having a conversation today and saying, okay, Constitution 2010, are we living it out? We're taking a break at this point, 28 minutes to 8 o'clock. We come back and we continue with this conversation after this.
You know that feeling where there's like a pain at the back of your head? What? You almost want to. But what about that moment when the pain finally starts to fade away? That moment when you go back to ordinary, to being your best self again. And it feels so good.
Get effective release from
Nairobi, get ready. The Cradle Study Abroad World Fair is coming to you. Meet top international universities, apply on the spot and secure partial scholarships. Get student visa and accommodation assistance all in one place. The Cradle World Fair will be held on Saturday, 31st August from 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. at Gallant Mall, Parklands, Nairobi. This is an invite-only event. Make sure to register by visiting www.cradle.com or call 0799 000 444.
The weather with SpiceFM.
All right, looking at cloudy conditions this morning in Nairobi, currently at 14 degrees. And 14 degrees in Nyeri, going to highs of 21, 13 in Nakuru, going to highs of 26 today. 14 degrees going to highs of 21 in Eldoret. And we're looking into a partly cloudy Mombasa at 26 and a partly cloudy Malindi at 27. We're looking into Kisumu at 24, which will go to highs of 29, and we'll see highs of 29 in Kakamega. As we look into Kampala this morning, cloudy conditions going to highs of 29, and into Dar es Salaam at 24, it's cloudy with highs of 29. Johannesburg at 13 is sunny with highs of 27, and at 25 is sunny in Mogadishu, 13 and sunny conditions in Addis Ababa. And looking into a cloudy Lagos at 25 and a cloudy Kinshasa at 20.
Spice and everything nice. Spice FM.
Spice up your life.
Busy in the city this morning. There's traffic on Jogo Road going towards Landis. Now Landis Road traffic is in and outbound, and some of that is starting to spill over towards Lusaka Road. Folks who are coming in from the Likoni interchange or Mombasa are going to Mombasa Road, trying to find their way through towards that side of the city. You're going to have to go a little bit slower because of that traffic that we are seeing here. Traffic is then getting into the city centre. Gong Road is also starting to build up, and we take a look at the Eastern Bypass, where traffic is then trickling in through towards Embakasi and then out to North Airport Road, and there's Super Highway with traffic around Survey. Heading out towards Muranga Road. It's starting to get busier on Limuru Road as well, and it's all connecting this morning. Very busy. We're stepping into traffic hour. Let's see what happens as we get into it proper. Talk to us on SpiceFM KE on X, hashtag The Situation Room.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
24 minutes to 8 o'clock. Oliver Waindi is our guest this hour. And we're looking at Constitution 2010, what it means in 2024. Ken?
Olive, good to see you. I know we've had a lot of discussions about the Constitution, and you sit at a very unique place. You have to study and understand the Constitution, and then you have to use your knowledge to impact Kenyans using your organization. I'm looking at the Constitution 14 years later, and most parts have been litigated. And we have understood the Constitution because of the several constitutional applications that have been made in court. But my understanding, there's still parts that have not been tested or even stretched. But I wish to know this morning, from where you sit at that unique place, do you think it's time that Kenyans rethought this Constitution?
It is difficult to rethink something that you've not even implemented, because that's precisely where the challenge is. There's been that school of thought that probably we need to rethink about the Constitution. But there's also another school of thought that asks, why do we have to even rethink about changing something that we've not even implemented? And that is the big dilemma we have, Ken. My suggestion is that we just need a full throttle approach in implementing this Constitution. We cannot fault something that has not been fully implemented. I mean, there are basic things, for example, like this Constitution. I mean, the very essence of it, of course, was the defense of the minority, talking about the minority, the people living with disabilities. These people are still where they were, probably worse than 2010. When you talk about the two-third gender rule that was proposed way back, now I do understand the gymnastics around it and why it's difficult to achieve it. But that is precisely what we need to discuss as a country. What can we do to get this parity that was suggested in the Constitution? We cannot just talk about, let's just shelve it like it was being discussed here some time back, because democracy is democracy. We have to go further. Remember, the Constitution is made for Kenyans. It's not the other way around. And so it is important that this Constitution address the aspirations of Kenyan people. When we talked about two-thirds, there was a reason for the framers to say that. When we talk about the defense for the people, for people living with disability, generally in the minority, there was a reason for that. And it is incumbent upon us as a generation to ensure that that is implemented. Now, the escapist would then say, no, this is too much. 14 years down the line, we ought to change this because this is not working. Now, it is true because, Constitution is not frozen in time because it has to evolve with the ebbs and flows of life. And therefore, one way or the other, we still need to work on areas that we think need to be worked on. That is not in question. But what is in question is the wholehearted approach in implementing this Constitution. And not only implementing it, but actually living it. Remember, you as a lawyer, you are aware that there is this famous judge, Antonin, who said, even banana republics have constitutions and have got bills of right. The bigger problem is, how do you live it out? So we have a big problem of having something written and something implemented and lived and internalized by Kenyans. So let's not talk about rethinking anything. Let's just have the right people, right mindset, and right architecture and right ecosystem to actually implement this Constitution. This Constitution is extremely good. I am not a lawyer. You are. But I can tell you as a non-lawyer that if you go through all the 18 articles that we have, this is probably the best Constitution that this country can ever get.
Okay. So yesterday we had a whole conversation about Schedule 5 here. So if you missed it, you might just want to catch it from YouTube. But this Constitution has also, just picking from where you've left, been touted as the most progressive. And you've just said it. It's one of the best constitutions. The problem is in the taste. It's the implementation of this Constitution. And we can increasingly see how Kenyans have become aware, thanks to organizations like yours and others that have made it a point to educate Kenyans, and thanks to lawyers who've often gone to court, for interpretations for public interest. They've often gone to court. There's a lot of awareness to this. Now, when this Constitution, just before the promulgation, I remember I was also in Naivasha. I was just a rookie, just joined journalism. I used to make all those trips to Great Rift and the rest. It was said to be a negotiated document, and 30% could have been bad, 70% could have been good. Now, on the point of being a progressive document, from where you sit, having tried and tested this, who is the weakest link in the implementation, having spoken about the implementation being the problem? Who could be the weakest link? Is it the judiciary? Is it the enablers of the constitution, the subsidiary legislations from parliament? Is it the wananchi and their interest in their constitution? Who is the weakest? Is it the politicians who negotiated for their benefits? Because they said, sometimes you want to put something in there that you think benefits you, but then suddenly things turn around and you realize you're no longer where it benefits. Now you're on the receiving end. So who would that be?
Well, who that be, I will answer, but I will start by first of all excluding wananchi, because wananchi are not part and parcel of this. They are the victims of this thing not getting implemented. So who has not done his part in terms of implementing this constitution? I would say that probably the executive carries the biggest responsibility. Obviously, because we have people in this executive who are obviously against this constitution, that notwithstanding anyway. The actual implementation of this constitution, if it got the support it did, that it required from the executive, would be much more easier. Let me just use examples that we've seen recently. Things that are obviously out of this constitution. For example, what has just happened right now between the merger, quote unquote, between the ODM and the ruling party. That alone is killing the spirit of multipartyism, which is part and parcel of what we talk about in terms of representation, and which is very explicit in our constitution. That only happened because the executive wanted it. But
Article 38 explicitly also gives you the right to associate with whoever you want to. It's in the constitution.
Yes, absolutely. That's what I'm saying, because the executive has got almost veto power. They can exercise that better than anybody else. So I am saying that the fact that they've got this power, it is therefore important for them to actually exercise it with much more humility to uphold this constitution, which has not happened. Yeah. So it's not everything that you do that is right. Everything that you do rightly is necessarily doing the right thing. And that is what ought to happen. So I feel that the executive, on paper, really mean good for this constitution, but in practice, we've had to have a lot of question marks in terms of their commitment to implementing this.
And you've seen the biggest load.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And
because we are in a presidential
and Parliament. What about Parliament? Because a lot of enablers of this constitution should have come from Parliament.
Yeah.
Yes, but you see, and I'm sorry to say this, that that is why even the assumption that Parliament is an appendage of the executive is exactly that. Because you have seen, for example, the finance bill that we had that became an act and that caused all mayhem in our country, emanated from the Parliament. But it did so on the behest of the executive. So I am saying that our Parliament is almost important, but the importance has been brought about by the executive's interference of the same.
Okay.
And that's why I'm saying that it is important for the executive to take, to have a relook on itself, on what it can do about this, and to let each and every part of the three arms of government to be independent. So far, it's not.
If you look at it, maybe with a little bit more scrutiny, why would any executive, doesn't matter where you are in the world, why wouldn't you want to implement, or why wouldn't you want to foster an environment whereby a supreme law would be implemented? Because if you look at how it came about, Kenyans around the country contributed to this, and it was what would make sense for everyone. So why would you be against the implementation of the same thing that would be put in place to safeguard Kenyans?
Yes, and that's a very good question. But remember, and that's why I talked about at the beginning of people who are used to the status quo. The status quo in our country and in our continent and in our generation has a lot of benefits. You can acquire land anywhere. You can literally rob our country of any amount of money that you want from the exchequer. You can do anything with that power. So when you've got an enlightened population, then it becomes a problem for you. And I'm not saying that is the case in our case. I'm just giving a hypothetical situation. When you've got an empowered people, then it becomes a problem for you to retain your status quo and the related benefits. And by the way, this is not new in our, even this women empowerment, which we as a sector and as an organization is really trying to propagate, is causing a lot of issues with the boy child, with the male people outside there, because they're saying that we are trying to incite their wives. But you forget that when you got a wife who is empowered, it is best for you, it's best for the family, it's best for the community. But for those who fear and who have had this power, which is generational, then have a problem trying to relate to that when you got people that initially depended on you in terms of decision, in terms of their destiny being shaped, depended on you, now all of a sudden want that to be owned by themselves, it's not very pleasant for them. And they will fight. And this is not beginning with our generation. It's not beginning with our executive right now. It has been a long, almost human history, long challenge for people who are in power to let go.
Yeah.
But let go, it will happen. Because a time is going to come, wanavyosema Waswahili, kuwa wengi wape, usipowapa watachukua wenyewe. And we really don't want to get there. There is a reason why framers sat down and got us these 18 articles. And it is incumbent upon you to actually implement it. Now, if you don't want, if there is a problem with it, and that's what George Washington said in the American Constitution, that they will make it very hard for it to be amended. But if amendment ought to happen, then it has to be people-driven and not elite-driven, like we've seen with BBI, like we saw with NADCO. We really don't want that. We want a situation where this thing belongs to Kenyans. It doesn't belong to the politicians. It doesn't belong to the lawyers. It doesn't belong to the pastors. This document belongs to the 54 million Kenyans that were there on 27th day of August 2010, that are here today, that will be here long after we are all gone. And it's important for us that we are able to bequeath the next generation of a document that we found and held in sacred and actually handed it over to them. As it is right now, that is not the case, and we can't allow that as a sector, as a generation, as a leadership of this organization.
You know what I find interesting? We keep talking about tinkering with the Constitution. Perhaps even if the leaders or the political leadership were serious about the Constitution and the benefit that the citizenry can derive from it, I want to dare suggest that perhaps they should rejig the Commission of the Implementation of the Constitution again, because that was, this is a pet subject of mine anyway, because if you don't have a commission, we have a commission for everything in this country, except the most important thing and the thing that we are forever grappling with. We had this discussion yesterday. Up until the time when we know that the Constitution has been operationalized, because that is the fight, isn't it? How do you interpret this? What does this mean? And we are forever going to the Supreme Court with these things here. If any executive, any government was serious, we would get a commission that actually deals singularly and solely with the Constitution and how it is that it should be implemented. Because so long as we have that in limbo, then it means that the power structures that have existed in the past will continue dominating. Because with the Constitution that we still have a situation where those in power behave as though we don't have a new Constitution. They actually do exactly what they want. They will disregard court orders, clean. They will go against the Constitution, again, clean, for you to work in broad, it's not at night, in broad daylight. And the problem is, one doesn't see the consequences that should follow. Now, but if indeed we understood all the tenets that deal with the Constitution and the implementation of the very aspects that minutely specify what would happen in the event of the abrogation of the said Constitution, very many people would be very reluctant to try and go against it.
Right.
But as things stand now, it's open season. The court pronounces it itself. Those in power simply ignore the courts.
It seems like there needs to be a tightening of screws, in certain areas. I mean, again, coming off a couple of conversations that we've had recently, and to say that, look, if truly that the security that has been set up to ensure that this happens were actually tightened, then people would be almost forced to live within the tenets of the Constitution. But it seems as though it's free for all. You can do whatever you want.
There are no consequences.
There are no consequences.
At least there are consequences.
There's a supreme law, but there's no supremacy that's being put in it.
60 years ago, or more than 60 years ago, Martin Luther King was talking about the U.S. Constitution, and he said that there were 3 enemies to that Constitution. And the more you look at it and the more you interrogate the statements, the more you literally see our situation in what he said in the 50s. He talked about the enemies of the Constitution then being racism, economic exploitation, and militarism. And that's what we're seeing here. Now, we don't have racism, but we've got negative ethnicity, we've got economic exploitation, and we've got militarism. And you can see it here that the oligarchs, those who are in power, would use these 3 to actually perpetuate the threat to our Constitution. When you talk about negative ethnicity, and you've seen it, where, for example, the very nature, the very base of our Constitution was about protecting the minorities. And you've seen how much we still have kids in Turkana, in Northeastern, who are still going to school under a tree, almost 65 years after our independence.
Right.
We have seen 400 out of every 100,000 kids born die. We have seen teachers still going to strike every 2 or 3 years because they're not paid. And that is, collectively, a big challenge to the implementation and the internalization and the living of this new Constitution. Then the economic exploitation. And you've seen it now over the past few weeks, and we also it in the country, where they collect a lot of money and they use it to literally buy the loyalty of people across the country. And therefore, that would not be possible if people were economically empowered. So the less empowered the population is, the better it is to control using resources. And militarism, we've all seen it, where you go out doing what is actually prescribed in the Constitution, and you literally get killed.
Yeah.
Yes, I mean, in 1 year, we've lost close to 300 people in the streets. And the worst part is that we don't even know how many exactly we've lost. And these are not just statistics. These are people's husbands, people's wives, brothers and sisters. And we're just moving on as a country as if it's no big deal. And so I'm saying that the normalcy with which we've taken our challenges is baffling and should not be accepted.
Right.
Yeah.
What do you see? Excuse me, if you were to look into a proverbial crystal ball, I mean, and I guess it's a sum of everything that has happened over the last 14 years. What would you see moving forward in terms of, because I mean, many have touted it as it's a good constitution. You yourself have said it. There are many things there that are fantastic in terms of the development of the Kenyan people, its sovereignty and, all of this statesmanship. What would you say would look like in the near future with all these ingredients that we see right now, non-compliance, goodwill or not?
Well, I would use the biblical analogy of going up to the mountaintop and looking across the land there, and it's a beautiful land. From the top, I can see a beautiful land called Kenya. Nothing gives me more hope than seeing our young people, including our sons and daughters, asking for what is the right. That gives me a lot of hope. When you see Gen Zs doing what they did, I don't advocate for violence, I don't advocate for lawlessness, but it gives me a lot of pleasure when I see people saying, this is our country, and we'll do everything else to make it better. That gives me a lot of hope. I'm also seeing a lot of hope, seeing more and more people getting elected and getting into areas of influence. I desire to see a country where a generation is going to come that will not look like Martin Luther King said, where you came from, but indeed the content of your character. I'm seeing hope. I'm seeing a generation that will come and implement this constitution, and not only implement it, but live it. I am seeing a situation and remember, when we talk about the future, we are not just necessarily talking about the constitution in exclusion.
Right.
We are looking at it as the bedrock of what we want to do, the economics, the politics, the social structures. And that is what, therefore, we come in to do as Uraia. Because one thing that we've realized is that everybody seems to be knowing the constitution. The problem is how to live it.
Yes.
And that is why our emphasis now going forward now becomes Utu. Utu has become the keyword that we want to permeate this country with. We want to, knock every door, talk about Utu. And Utu is as biblical, is as Quran, is as Veda as it goes. Because it all goes as, do unto others what you want to be done unto you.
Yeah.
And love thy neighbor as you love thyself. If we only implemented that, then there will be no need for this constitution. Remember, they said, I think it is, I think it was George Washington who said that if angels lived in this world, then we would not need any constitution. And if angels ruled over this world, then we would not need constitution either.
Is it George Washington?
I think it's George Washington.
We assume he had seen some angels.
Yes. But generally, what it means is that we are living in this world, and apart from things getting written in a constitution, it's how I relate to you. I don't need anything in the constitution to respect you as a human being.
Right.
I don't need anything to be written not to steal his phone or your phone or your phone.
Exactly.
So there are things that are written, right? But I think it's just common sense. It's just a decorum requirement that we live like human beings ought to live. And that's why we are now saying, beyond the constitution, how do we make people just be good to one another? How do we make people to live as human beings? And therefore, Utu is becoming the catchphrase that we are saying.
Yeah.
It's originating from the word Ubuntu.
Yeah.
That, okay, let's forget about everything written. Can we just be good to one another?
And just treat each other right.
Absolutely.
Fantastic way to end on this morning. It is Katiba Day, 14 years after the promulgation of the Constitution 2010. And there's a lot of work that needs to be done, but that there's also something that we can do one to another in terms of humanity. Oliver Waindi is the Executive Director of Uraia Trust. He's been our guest this hour. More conversations to be had. But thank you for being in the hot seat this morning until we talk again. Good morning. It's 8 a.m.
Spice up your life.
It's now 8 a.m. Get effective relief from strong pain with Panadol Extra. Panadol. Relief starts here.
Good morning, this is the News Wire. I'm Leah Ubaga. A group of youth will today mark 14 years since the enactment of the 2010 Constitution by taking to the streets of Nairobi's central business district to demand for President William Ruto's immediate resignation. Chairman of the People's Assembly, Buka Omolo, said Katiba Day will not just be a day of commemoration, but a day of mass action. The People's Assembly spokesperson, Samuel, added that Generation Z, the People's Assembly, and 54 other revolutionary organizations will host protests across the country, citing the president's failure to uphold the constitution and address critical issues such as corruption, youth unemployment, and the high cost of living. Activist Wanjiru commented on her part that Kenyans cannot continue living in an active crime scene and do nothing about it.
Tomorrow, August 27, Katiba Day, will not just be a day of commemoration, it will be a day of mass action. We are announcing a general strike, a protest against the tyranny of William Ruto, and a demand for his immediate resignation. We will not rest until justice is done.
We cannot continue living in an active crime scene and do nothing about it. We cannot continue with the wake of corruption, with the wake of abductions, with the wake of police killings, with the wake of everything wrong that is going on in this government.
We are inviting you tomorrow, as the Katiba turns 14, at 14:00 hours. We are asking you to take a short break and ask yourself whether this constitution that gives us and grants us these rights has been respected.
More than 26,000 students have filed appeals against the new university funding model, seeking reassessment of their financial categories. The students, along with their families, are requesting to be moved to funding bands that more accurately reflect their financial circumstances. The university's fund has committed to supporting students throughout the appeal process and has encouraged them to continue attending classes while their appeals are being reviewed. CEO of the university's fund, Geoffrey Monari, on his part, has defended the model, asserting that it's based on recommendations from a presidential working group. Today marks a significant juncture for African Union Commission chairperson contender Raila Odinga, as President William Ruto will formally unveil his candidature. Presidents and officials from the East African region are expected to attend the launch at State House, Nairobi, which is set to begin any time from now. They include Yoweri Museveni of Uganda, Samia Suluhu of Tanzania, Salva Kiir of South Sudan, Hassan Sheikh of Somalia, as well as representatives from Rwanda and Burundi. Foreign Affairs Cabinet Secretary Musalia Mudavadi has reiterated that Kenya will make every effort to ensure that Raila takes the post.
He'll be announcing not just to the Kenyan people, but to the continent and to the international community at large, that Kenya has officially endorsed the candidature of Raila Amolo Odinga. Naturally, because this calls for foreign engagements, then the Ministry of Foreign Affairs must be very pivotal in undertaking this task.
This will be the second time for Kenya to present a candidate for the position. In the first attempt, which was unsuccessful, former Cabinet Secretary Amina Mohammed lost the position to Musa Faki. That's the News Wire. I'm Leah Ubaga.
.5 Spice FM, Kisumu.
One of the things that are ailing our country is negative ethnicity. You find you as a state officer, instead of thinking as a Kenyan, you think like a tribal person.
Let me tell you something. The biggest problem we have had in this country is a leadership deficit. There is nothing that you are going to do in the process of change if you are not a risk taker. So you really have to pursue your vision to a logical conclusion and even be ready to step on people's toes.
When it comes to the economy, you can run away with it. They say statistics are like bikinis. They reveal a lot, but they conceal the vitals. And so government people would throw statistics at you and tell you they're revealing a lot of information to you, but it's really concealing the real vitals.
We need to get out of that, because when we want to grow our democracy, one basic thing that really requires to be understood by the political class, by all of us, is institutions are critical.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
It's busy in the city this morning, and it's coming off heavy, the Thika Superhighway, traffic then coming into the CBD, and now quite a lot of it on Wangari Maathai as you head now out and in and outbound, and this is all coming off of Limuru Road, coming in through Westlands, Chiromo Ring Road. Westlands is an absolute mess. So traffic coming in the Thika Superhighway, coming off of Kiambu Road, it's touching on Wangari Maathai, coming round towards museums and then getting its way into the city. There's also traffic then coming off of Jogo Road. It's going towards Haile Selassie. Imagine that, all the way through Landis and then into the city. We're not even dealing with incoming traffic on Gong Road. All of this extremely busy. Let's take a quick look at the Eastern Bypass, where traffic is not trickling, but it's heavy through towards Embakasi, and then also on Outer Ring, coming into Mombasa Road as well and out towards the city. All of this is doing the thing. We are in traffic hour proper. Let's see what happens as we go through it. We'll talk on SpiceFM KE on X, hashtag the Situation Room.
This is the Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Okoh, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latiff, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
8 minutes after 8. Well done. We did 7 after 7. Now we're doing 8 after 8. Let's see if we can get it on 9 after 9. But okay, let's see what happens as we go through today. It is Tuesday, and we're getting into the third hour of Kenya's biggest conversation. Our guest for this hour is already in the hot seat, and it's a hot issue that we'll look at as we get into those matters this morning. Let me remind you about what's happening on the 31st of August, especially now that we're getting into university admission season and everybody's looking for that higher education. Sometimes you want to go out of the country, is it not? Yes. And you want to be able to say, okay, where do I go? Which school do I go to? This is the degree that I intend to pursue. Which is the best institution for me to go to? What can I afford? Who should I speak to? So many questions buzzing around your brain, and you're wondering, okay, what do I do? Guess what? Cradle understands a lot of these issues that you may have. Cradle says, we get it. And we know that sometimes you've been scammed. We know that sometimes you're not really sure what to do. We know that sometimes you don't know how to match what you want to do to a career, to university, to a country. So we've taken all this information and we've put it in a place whereby you can come and access, where you are sure of integrity, where you're sure of a character, of a proper process from start to finish. And we have stepped into the market to make sure that these questions can be answered, and answered in a manner to your complete satisfaction. What they've also done is that they've come up with a world study abroad fair. It takes place this Saturday on the 31st of August from 11 p.m. to 4 p.m. You can come in and meet all kinds of providers from universities from different countries, the UK, New Zealand, the US, Grenada, Cyprus, New Zealand, across board. And these universities will be on ground to talk to you. You can apply on the spot and gain admission. You can talk about your visa and accommodation. You can also talk about scholarships. So many things up for grabs from 11 to 4 p.m. on the 31st. What you need to do is register cradle.com, www.cradle.com, or call 0799 000 444, and help is right there for you. All right, getting into our conversation for this hour. The Finance Act 2023 made a comeback, or is making a comeback, All of these things happening at the same time. And joining us this hour, already in the hot seat, is Dr. Alex Kamal, who is a business consultant, and we're looking at the Finance Act 2023, a burden or goodwill. And he's here with us. Good morning.
Good morning to you, Ndu.
How are you doing?
Fine, thank you.
Good to have you here.
Thank you very much.
Finance Act crept back into somehow 2023.
Yes.
We're going to look at what this all means. I tried to crack at it a little bit a couple of days ago, but let's open it up properly today and say, okay, fine, what does it actually mean? But let's welcome you properly with today's proverb, shall we?
Wonderful.
All right.
Proverbs for the whole of this week come from the People's Republic of Algeria. There is an excess of familiarity at the root of all hostility.
What do you think?
There's an excess of familiarity
at the root of all hostility.
At the root of all hostility. I think it talks about that we need to keep our friends close, but our enemies closer. Because the people that inflict the biggest harm and pain to anyone are the people closest to you. So there's a familiarity breeds contempt.
Yes, so they tell us.
So they say.
Yeah.
So basically, I say if you are not close to me, then chances of you hurting me are very minimal, and therefore we should be keen about the people who we keep close to us, our inner circles.
Indeed. Indeed. Okay, well, I guess that interpretation makes sense, and looking at conversations that we'll have. Finance Act 2023, not even through the back door.
Yes.
The front door is flung wide open, and it's walking in boldly and slapping everybody in the face.
Yes.
And we're asking the question, okay, so what exactly does that mean? People were not yet rejoicing when it was, shut down by the courts.
Yes.
And said, okay, that means we're not going to have to pay for a couple of these things. We're not going to have to pay these deductions towards housing levy. We're not going to have to do 1, 2, 3. Maybe fuel will go back to 8% VAT. And then no sooner had that happened, the higher court said, no, we're going back. So what is an overview of what all this means?
Thank you very much, Ndu. What that means is that actually nothing changes. Because in the first instance, even after the High Court had quashed the implementation of Finance Act 2023, we had not seen the government implementing the proposed new changes. The fuel was still selling at 18% VAT, 16% VAT. And the salaries were the people earning the high tax high salary bands from 800,000 and above per month were still subjected to that 5% pay as you earn.
Yes.
So nothing had changed. So I would say something had changed if by the time the High Court had quashed the implementation of Finance Act 2023, the government had acted to implement the new changes. Then after now the Supreme Court came to suspend the implementation of the Finance Act, of implementation of the ruling by the High Court, then we would have said something has changed, but nothing has changed. And it was not supposed to change from the word go, because the moment the Court of Appeal said that it has seen in its wisdom to drop the implementation of Finance Act 2023, that very day or the day after, we had the National Assembly Majority Leader Kimani Ichung'wah saying that that was as a result of judicial activism, and there's no way Finance Act 2023 will be thrown out of the doors. So nothing was supposed to change from the word go.
So we're saying the leader of the majority has the powers and the means to disregard a court order.
That's actually the $1 million question, but he's in record saying that that declaration by the Court of Appeal about throwing the Finance Act 2023 will not carry the day. And we have seen the Supreme Court has suspended the implementation of that court ruling. So I feel we will go back to where we were. Finance Act 2023 will be implemented in full.
But don't you think that was out of frustrations? Because Kimani Ichung'wah made a context to what he was saying. So it was out of the frustrations, a government that cannot function entirely. Because once the Finance Act 2024 was rejected, or let me say bill, because it was in the assented to, then obviously the fallback plan was 2023. So 2023 again is challenged, which had been fully implemented, by the way. 2022, 2023 had been fully implemented. But it's again thrown out, and you're told you cannot even use the former framework to collect taxes. So out of frustrations, do you think it was out of frustrations more than out of the power of being a majority leader in the National Assembly?
That's for sure. It was out of frustration, but whether out of frustration or not, law should always be respected. And a person of his caliber who occupies a very senior position in this government, every word that he utters, he should realize the power that it carries. So if he's seen to oppose the judicial pronouncements, then the kind of precedence that sets is not good for the rest of the country.
I think most of my concern with what happened is this. We are going back to the Finance Bill 2023.
Yes.
However, the Appropriations Act was pegged on the Finance Bill 2024 if it was passed. Tie these loose ends for me. How do you reconcile the Finance Bill 2023 and Appropriation Bill 2024? How do you tie it in?
A very good question, Ken. How you tie the two is that when the Appropriation Act was passed and was assented to by the President for 2024-2025, actually it was for the expenditure was at 3.9 trillion as per what was envisioned by the passing of if the Finance Bill 2024 would have passed. But now Finance Bill 2024 did not pass. So what happens? But the president nevertheless assented to Appropriation Bill 2024-2025 at 3.9 trillion.
And this usually happens before the Finance Act. They don't fall at the same time.
They don't fall at the same time, but they have it had to be signed before 30th June of this year.
Yes.
So the president signed that, even after understanding that the Finance Bill 2024 had not been passed. And the two needs to balance, the figure at the Finance Bill and the figure at Appropriation Bill, because it is the revenue side and the expenditure side of the budget. But it was passed. But what happened is soon after it was passed, a supplementary budget was tabled in the Parliament that sought to really streamline the changes that had occasioned the failure of Finance Bill 2024 to be enacted into law. So we saw supplementary budget coming to reduce the budget of the government by 177 billion Kenya shillings.
Okay, hold on.
Yes.
Just that what you've just said.
Yes.
To streamline this expenditure,
yes, and the revenue,
to streamline the sources of this particular revenue. Can you just explain that a little bit more? Because oftentimes these terms come flying at us and we're like, okay, so what exactly does this mean?
Thank you very much. What I mean is that the expenditure was still anchored at 3.9 trillion.
Yes.
And by the time we were, it was being prepared and it was being prepared, the assumption was that the Finance Bill 2024 would pass. And the Finance Bill, which is actually an omnibus tax law amendment, was to bring to the country an extra or additional 346 billion Kenya shillings. That's what the government was supposed to collect more through the passing or changing of the tax laws under Finance Bill 2024. So that did not happen. So if that now did not happen, out of the 346 billion that the government was anticipating to collect from the passing of the Finance Bill 2024, two things happened. They said, we will borrow more. 346 was divided into two, 177 billion and 169 billion. If you add 177 billion and 169 billion, you get 346 billion. So we said we will borrow more 169 billion, and we will reduce our budget by 177 billion. So they wanted now to really explain or capture that income deficit, 346 billion. The finance bill is not passing.
Yes.
How do we bridge that
We
gap?
still need the money.
We still need the money.
Essentially, yeah.
So we borrow more and we cut our expenditure by 177 billion. And the 177 billion that we did reduce our expenditure, the county government share of revenue was reduced by 20 billion. And the national government was left to reduce its budget by the rest, the remainder, which is 177 minus 20 billion. So the national government reduced its expenditure by 157 billion. And the 157 billion, actually, what received the highest beating is the development expenditure. Because the development expenditure was reduced by 130 billion, and the recurrent expenditure by 27 billion, which was again vice versa. When we are talking about austerity measures, we should really cut down on recurrent expenditure, but not development expenditure. But in this case, the government did the other way around. We reduced our development budget by about 130 billion when the Finance Bill 2024 did not pass. And we are going to borrow more, 169 billion. And the worst part is that this 169 billion we are going to borrow more, now that the revenue expectations have reduced, we are going to borrow domestically.
But let me ask this question. If we say we've cut our expenditure, why then do we need to borrow?
Remember, we were supposed to cut our expenditure by 346 billion, which was not possible.
Well, again, the question, why was it not possible? Let me explain to you why I asked the question.
Yes.
Every time we're told about a budget and we're told about expectations or revenue expectations from the government, yes, which finance bill explains to us how it is now. We are supposed to mop up this money. I then delve into history. How many times in the last 10 years have we actually met our revenue projections? We have actually, okay? And the oddest thing was it was during the COVID times.
That's for sure.
Yes. Now, the reason why we met it, several things happened. One, all these taxes that this particular government seemed to feel if they implemented would raise us more money. At that time, the complete opposite is what was done. Okay. And evidence has shown that even when VAT on fuel went up, the government did not raise more money through the fuel levy. If anything, it raised less. Okay. So here's my question. If it is clear that the government has put in place or had put in place methods that guaranteed would not raise the money that it was supposed to raise. One. Two, when that didn't happen, we had an alternate situation where the bill that was supposed to help raise this money was suspended. Okay? Okay. So here we are. But has anybody come out to tell us why it is all these things that the government keeps saying they need to do must be done? Can we not suspend these projects, except for the very critical one? Can we just not suspend and say for a whole year? But it's been done also. So I'm not saying something that hasn't been done. Kibaki did it. Suspend the development projects. We already have roads. You want to build new one? Stop it. People are used to bad roads. Give them a year and then promise the following year we'll build them. Okay? That's one. Two, I have never seen anywhere it is documented that the money that we supposedly have before we borrow has been insufficient for our needs. maybe somebody can explain to me how it's documented. I have not seen it. It's the same question we raise with county governments when they tell us that this money is not enough. Yet the one they receive,
we don't know what you've done with it.
I'm not really sure that they have demonstrated conclusively that either there's a shortfall or that it has not met the needs that they have. But it's a narrative that is propagated every time. So, again, with everything that I have said, which are many things,
yes,
why does the government feel the need to borrow domestically when they haven't demonstrated that the money that we are actually able to collect has been utilized in the manner that they have said it would? Because it hasn't been demonstrated.
And I like that question, City. But let me start by responding to the issue why we cannot stop development budget altogether. And I wish we could, because during times of crisis, desperate measures are supposed to be undertaken. And for instance, the budget for 2023-2024, we had budgeted to incur 800 billion for development expenditure. But at the end of the year, the only money that we used under development expenditure was 250 billion. 250 billion. So we don't exercise prudent financial management. We don't follow what we budget for, because 800 billion, spending 250 billion out of 800.
What happened to the 550?
What the 550 was used under the current expenditure.
Okay. So what is that, like, keeping the lights on, paying salaries?
No,
mandazi. Yes.
Tea, mandazi.
Yeah, that's the thing. Yes. All those things that you do on a daily.
It's enough, more tea, more mandazi.
Yes. So then the issue of why I don't understand the county government continue to receive money from the national government, whereas the Auditor General every other year gives or raises audit queries saying that the county governments are not able to explain this sum of money.
Yes.
And recently, I think it was in yesterday's newspaper, that the county government of Nairobi has not been able to explain 1.3 billion Kenya shillings in terms of the salary payments. It paid a salary of 11 billion in the year that ended June 2024. But out of those 11 billion, 1.3 billion cannot be explained.
It was expended, but you cannot tell where it went.
It did not go through the salary and remuneration bank account.
Okay.
But don't you think then, Daktari, that in fact the government has actually helped solve this problem for us? Because if we targeted 800 billion for development and we only spent 250, they've told us we needed 250. Okay? Yes.
Yeah, because I was going to ask that. Sorry, CT. I was going to ask that question. When you say that only 250 billion was spent on development in a particular year, maybe that's what they wanted to spend. It's not that they only had that to spend and that they pushed it and put it in some bins. Maybe that's what decided. Did all this money that's available, we are going to use 250 for development so that it can show that we've done something. The rest of it,
Bandu, let me ask the question. If let's say 250 billion was spent, in terms of our development record and things we wanted to do, was apart from dams which were not built but were promised, stadiums which were supposed to have been completed but were not built, and all these things that are normally promised in the budget but are never done, did Kenyans stop living and going about their business as they normally do? No, they did not.
They did not.
Okay, so this 550, that was for recurrent expenditure. What on earth were we spending 550 billion shillings on? Salaries? Okay. Auditor General, again.
Yes.
Auditor General comments on counties and we talk of billions. Auditor General comments on national government, talks of a trillion. Somehow there's a trillion.
A trillion is a million.
Imagine. It's a lot of
a million.
Yeah, that's for sure. A lot of money.
And she did say she had problems tracing this thing somewhere. So And we wanted to borrow just 170 billion or something. Now, surely, if we found this trillion, which
we don't need to borrow,
what do we need to borrow for? We'll actually have excess money.
Yeah, exactly. You'll be able to sort out all of these things that we're talking about without having to go anywhere looking for the extra. Okay, let's take a break because it's starting to get a little bit frustrating when we think about it. Let's take a break and cool it off a bit. We come back and we talk about it. Finance Act 2023, what does it mean that it's making its re-debut? Can you re-debut something? And then also look at, financial prudence on part of governance and say, what really needs to be done from a government business point of view. What needs to happen? We'll come back and we'll discuss that. Dr. Alex Kamau, business consultant, is our guest this hour. And we're looking at the elements that then form what would be prudent financial behavior by government. It is 29 minutes to 9. Good morning.
This is the Situation Room. The only way to start.
You know that feeling where there's a pain at the back of your head? What? You almost want to. But what about that moment when the pain finally starts to fade away? That moment when you go back to ordinary, to being your best self again. And it feels so good.
Get effective release from strong pain with Panadol Extra. Panadol. Release starts here. If symptoms persist, seek medical advice. Always read label before use.
Hi everyone, you may have heard about the Cradle Study Abroad Fair happening this month on August 31st. Can you tell us what students can expect?
UE is a state-accredited university based in Germany with a campus in Dubai. We offer state-accredited and cutting-edge programs in business, technology, media, psychology and sports. And you are looking to interact with our curriculum, being that it is project-based, heavy on practice, and you'll be looking to interact with lots of industry leaders in Germany and Dubai. And as a bachelor student, you're also looking to complete a mandatory 6-month internship.
That sounds fantastic. So everyone make sure to visit the Cradle World Fair at the Galana Mall Parklands on August 31st. Make sure to register by visiting www.cradle.com or call 0799 000 444.
The weather with SpiceFM.
Cloudy conditions continue this morning in Nairobi, currently at 14 with highs of 23, and we'll see highs of 24 in a mostly sunny Nakuru at 13, 15 and cloudy. Looking into Nyeri, going to highs of 26, and we'll see highs of 27 in a cloudy Eldoret this morning. All right, into Mombasa, we'll see highs of 27 and we'll see highs of 29. In Malindi, it's partly cloudy. Looking into Kisumu, going to highs of 29 and we'll see highs of 28 in a clear Kakamega this morning. All right, into Kampala, highs of 28 and we'll see highs of 29 in Dar es Salaam. Johannesburg was clear at 13 and we're looking into a sunny Mogadishu, going to highs of 28 today, and looking into a partly cloudy Addis Ababa, currently at 15, going to highs of 20. And Lagos is mostly cloudy at 25 with highs of 29, while it's partly sunny at 20 in Kinshasa, going to highs of 33.
Spice up your life.
It's busy in most parts this morning, still continues. Coming off the Eastern Bypass, let's take a real quick look at that. And very heavy as you then get towards Embakasi, and then touching on Outer Ring a little bit here and there. It's still coming off heavy of parts of the Thika Superhighway, and that all went round towards Wangari Maathai Way, and then coming in towards Uhuru Highway past museums. That is going to continue also for some time as we're still in traffic hour. We're going to check back in a while and see how this all progresses. Keep talking to us on SpiceFM KE on X, hashtag The Situation Room.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
At 25 minutes to the top of the hour, our conversation continues with Dr. Alex Kamau, and we are looking at Okay, so the return of the Finance Act 2023, but then the tenets beyond that and what it really means for prudent financial governance, or rather, proper government spending. And I think we've been asking this question for the longest time. What does it mean when you say that a government is fiscally responsible? When we talk about austerity measures, but then we see that positions are created. And we talk about austerity measures, but we think that there's a lot of spending on things that actually, you could actually get by with, standing around a table and having a teacup. But we see that this makes for government spending into the millions. How can you say we want to be financially prudent, whereby we see on this other side so much spending? How can the two work?
What do you mean by financial prudence? When you say financial prudence,
well, I mean,
especially in a government,
it's making decisions whereby you must be prudent, especially whereby you have huge responsibility when it comes to the things that you should be using to protect livelihoods. When we're talking about education, what are we looking at today? When we're talking about health, just take a walk around the country. And then you're saying you can be lavish on one side, whereby we're asking you to be prudent, and you can't.
Let me ask the question. Would you then say that we have a very clear understanding of how our financial jurisprudence is structured? We understand it, and it is clear. But this discussion that we're having seems to point to an executive that is determined to ignore those very structures and to simply implement what they think suits them best.
What would that look like?
A good question. Actually, for me, financial prudence means cutting your clothes according to your size. But the government is not doing that. And why I say that is because we continue even to borrow at very high interest rates, because financial prudence encompasses even how you are sourcing your money. At 18% for treasury bills and treasury bonds, I wonder where does government plan to invest that money so that it can be able to pay that loan at that percentage. Why I'm saying that is because out of all the companies that have shares listed in Nairobi Securities Exchange, there's none that pays dividends at a rate of 10% of what you have invested.
None.
There's none. There's none. So that is causing even what we call crowding out of the private sector. Because instead of you and I investing money to the companies that are listed in Securities Exchange, Nairobi Securities Exchange, we are taking money to the government. So there is imbalance because the government is not in the business of making investment. The private sector is better in doing that. If you give private sector a shilling, it will be able to make it 2 shillings, 3 shillings over time. But the government does not do that. I usually find it very, 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 very interesting that the government is borrowing at a very punitive rate of 18%. And even the person that you are borrowing from is not able to invest his money at such a rate.
Why would somebody be willing to actually borrow at that very high rate? Well, what is it that would drive somebody? Because it's not just risky, it's very risky. Why? Because the exposure is enormous.
It's called moral hazard.
Yes.
Moral hazard is a concept where the doer of the action is not responsible for the outcome of his actions. He is not bothered. It's for instance, you have a matatu and you have hired a driver. This driver might misuse this vehicle, ride it on pavements, does all manner of things. But when the car has a mechanical issue, it is not him.
It is you.
Yes, it is the owner who will cater for those repairs. The same thing, the government, even including what we see today, like now the CBA, that the teachers are clamoring for its implementation. Someone who was in the government 5 years ago promised teachers that they would raise their salaries.
Yes.
And they knew very well they will not be there 5 years to come. So the government of the day will take care, will sort out that problem. So financial prudence is basically planning for today and also putting future in mind.
And being cautious, is it not?
Being cautious.
Is it not being cautious? Because
Yes.
you can say, and maybe from a financial point of view, you can maybe correct, but wouldn't you want to, I've often said that if you're not taking care of the very basic for your citizenry, then you have no business in government.
They say,
maybe extreme, but...
It makes sense because they say when you take care of pennies, the pounds will take care of themselves. And it is the small leak that will sink the ship. And what I'm seeing, like recently, we were downgraded by all the three major credit rating agencies, international credit rating agencies. Moody started and downgraded the credit rating of Kenya, the sovereign financial instruments that Kenya offers, that is treasury bonds and euro bonds. Then Fitch followed. Then just the other day, S&P followed. And by doing so, they also downgraded three financial institutions here in Kenya. NCBA received a beating, KCB and INM. And
the main lenders. The main lenders to the government.
Yes. They are the main lenders to the government. Yeah. And actually, it's like also these credit rating agencies, they are calling out on these commercial banks that the main essence that you exist is to really facilitate and foster growth in the private sector by giving them credit. But why are you giving credit to the
expensive?
Making it very expensive.
Giving them very high interest.
Very high interest. So, and there's something that they say that when the target becomes the measure, then when the measure becomes the target, then it ceases to be a good measure. When the measure becomes the target, then it ceases to be a good measure. And what I mean by that, if the measure of financial performance by commercial banks is how much they lend, how much they earn or how much money they make from lending. I think that is mismatched because they can as well lend to international borrowers, and by doing so they deny locals that credit. That would not really help them to achieve the goal that they were made to exist in the first place.
But then if we take your view, then are you then suggesting or are you saying that this brings about a situation that could perhaps be an overexposure for the banks?
It is already. They
are exposed.
They are already exposed in a big way.
Yeah. I'm silent because that one is not good. There's a country in West Africa called Ghana where the stories began just like these ones of ours. There was not much of a difference. And what then set this house of cards tumbling was when they defaulted. And then suddenly, it was chaotic. Completely chaotic.
It's likely to happen here.
Yes, it is very likely because any investment of the nature, whether it's in government paper or whether it's in securities, suddenly the value didn't take a dip, it took a dive. And everything that previously had been certain was now up in the air completely. Completely up in the air.
And they were forced to take haircuts.
Serious haircuts.
One of the things that the government has spoken about is how to manage the wage bill. There are two areas of our finances that we hemorrhage seriously. One is payment on loans, and secondly, the recurrent expenditure. The heaviest is salaries, which takes about 1.1 T out of the whole budget. Then followed by, and I just saw a story yesterday also that the expenditure in running of the government offices has crossed the 1
trillion mark.
1 trillion mark.
So that is the what?
Expenditure for running the government Forget about salaries. Forget about the other expenses. Salary, which is a constant. Just to run them, motor vehicles. I assume flowers, mandazi and tea, newspapers and all.
Yes.
For the first time, crossed the 1 T mark.
Wait, so we already at 2 T?
Yes. Without development.
Yeah.
I like tea because when it says trillion, I get depressed. T.
Yes.
And it's just government doing its business.
Recurrent.
On our behalf.
Yeah.
Recurrent.
Keeping the lights on, doing the runarounds, having fuel in vehicles and things like that.
You must not leave out choppers, Lindu.
Yeah, of course, that's, and not doing anything. So, not doing anything developmentally.
Nothing. They've not touched it at all.
Has not been touched at all.
Let's add another 1.2 trillion for debt servicing.
Yes, so it's debt and recurrent.
Charge?
Yes, which is the first charge.
So this is 3.6.
Yes, trillion.
3.6.
It's an entire budget. That's the entire budget void of development.
Zero.
Yes.
Okay, so this is the question.
Yes.
How can you say that actually government is being run in a cautious, if City doesn't like prudent, in a cautious,
I like prudent.
You like prudent?
I just wanted you to explain what you meant. You meant by it.
Yeah.
Yes.
So in this case, how do we say that it's being run in that manner if your entire annual budget, which is supposed to be combination of development as well as these other things, is not even being met? Is it not just staring down this dangerous rabbit hole then of number 1, default, number 2, underdevelopment, number 3, continually being delisted on these 3 lists that you've talked about?
Yes, I wouldn't say that the government is exercising prudent financial management. It is doing completely the opposite. And the hole that we find ourselves in, we are only digging it deeper. Because, as I had said, that the government of the day probably is envisioning that in the next 5 years, either it will not be there or they will cross the bridge once they get there. So it's very sad. It's very sad. And what actually saddens me the most is that right now, the borrowing cost, the central bank rate, is at 12.75%. They reduced the other day by 0.25% from 13% to 12.75%. And that did not make much change in terms of facilitating better access of credit by the private sector. Right now, if you go to any commercial bank, you are likely to get a loan facility from a rate of 22 to 23%. And that's what has made the money become so scarce in the economy. And you wonder why the government is not understanding that, because they are saying that we are having money stock out. And because we are having money stock out, we need to print more money. Even if you print more money and you make it very expensive for the private sector to access, you will still print more money. Because the solution that you are coming up is not addressing the problem of the day.
The problem is who sits at who is in charge of our monetary policy and the fiscal policy. I think that's where our problem is.
Yes.
But before City comes in, I like to ask this as my final question.
Yes.
The president the other day said that in the next budget, we will do what is called zero budgeting. Is this a solution?
First of all, what is zero budgeting?
It means, now what they do is they start from the existing. So last year we gave you 30 billion. This year, let's add 5. Or no, you didn't utilize. Let's subtract 3. You have 27.
That is zero budgeting.
Yeah, that is. So what they are doing from next year, according to the president, is we are looking at a sector. We are looking at the education sector and budgeting based on need from zero. We are not considering.
Wait a moment. What have they been doing all this time?
Adding.
So
So they
to
say
the
we
budget.
gave you 30 billion last year. Let's add you 2.
No, I understand, but you add because you've understood there's a need to add, isn't it?
No, but in this case, you're just adding, so it would appear as though we gave you
Budgeting
something.
corruption.
Just keep quiet over there.
Yes,
No,
budget.
but
They used to budget for corruption. in
Budgeting
there.
presupposes that there's a plan based on need, isn't it?
One would hope.
Not for our government.
One would hope, and maybe stop me if I'm wrong, Dr. Kamau.
Yes.
But you look at the landscape.
Yes.
I mean, just from basic business 101, that's what budgeting is. You look at the landscape and you say, okay, these are the needs. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is the kind of money that we have. We're going to apply that over the need. However, not just apply it, but we're going to say it's going to run in this manner for this period of time, and that will allow us. If we don't have enough, we're going to get it from somewhere else, but we're going to make sure that we can fill the gaps. No? Okay. It doesn't appear as
Will it work? Will it work?
It should work. It should work. It is a bit more cumbersome. And to start with, there are many types of budgets. The one that the government has been used is incremental budgeting. And incremental budgeting is the one that you have explained very well, that the previous year we had given the Ministry of Education 6 billion. So because we have expanded the budget, we can only also increase what we had allocated to them by maybe 10%.
This is an acceptable practice.
It is not a good practice. There are times that it is relevant, especially when you don't have much planning time.
What do you mean we don't have
a whole
much
year?
How?
September is when the budget process actually starts for next year's budget.
Yes.
So what are we talking about that there's no time?
No, I'm saying there are cases when incremental budgeting is appropriate, but not for the case of the government. And
when is it appropriate?
When it is appropriate is when the expenditure does not change much, but right now, but in terms of the government, the expenditure does change a lot, because this year we want to the Ministry of Education to be allocated more money because of constructing more classes for grade 9. But if we increase the budget by 100 billion because of that, then next year.
Dr. Mao,
yes.
What you've just said vis-a-vis the classroom, that's voodoo. You know why?
Yes.
When people exit the system that we currently have in secondary school, there'll be empty classes.
That's true.
All right? Empty. There'll be no students. The classes have already been built. They exist. What are we building new classes for? Which is easier, to build new classes or to move students into those empty classes?
That will happen, but that notwithstanding, the population is also growing.
By 1 million?
The population is also growing.
Yes. It tends to grow. In fact, it leads me to the question that I actually had in mind before I subtract myself.
Yes.
Under what circumstances would we have a situation where not much changes? Because you mentioned that perhaps there are situations where this incremental way of going about your business affairs is when perhaps there hasn't been very much change. What would occasion a situation where there isn't much change? There's always change.
There's always change. At the government level, there's always change. But at the household level, maybe nothing much is changing at the household level.
In terms of demand, in terms of needs?
Yes. Even your salary. You know your salary, if it is 100,000, it is likely to remain that for the next 2 to 3 years. So the budget for this year will be the budget for the subsequent year, until maybe you have a different source of income. But for the government, the dynamics are different. Many things change. Because, you know, the larger the government is, the more center of expenditure it has, and the more the movements. Because, like now, we are talking that the government has got 347 parastatals.
How many?
347 parastatals.
Hey. There are that many?
There are that many.
Without margin or plus?
Without margin.
Without margin.
Without margin. And for instance, now with the issue of margin, that's when the zero budget, the zero budgeting will be more applicable, because if a certain ministry had about 10 parastatals, and these parastatals have been condensed into 5, then we cannot continue to use incremental budgeting, where we are saying that ministry had given them 200 billion. Now we are going to add 10% of that, because the reason why we are merging and consolidating the number of parastatals that we have is to really work on the wage bill.
You know, there's what you've just described to me. If I were to juxtapose it with conversations that politicians in this country have, especially those who are currently in power, it's what you call vacuum activity. A lot is done. There's a lot of dust raised, but it's a zero-sum game. Nothing much is achieved. The president was in Nyamira. He promised them a university. There was a working group that among the things they suggested was that we should merge universities. We should rationalize this entire process vis-a-vis student population, courses, and so forth, which means reduce the number of universities. He goes and promises them a university. Okay? So, it's a good promise. People equate universities with all manner of imaginary things. Okay? But it will not achieve anything. So, when we have 347 parastatals, what it tells me is that our idea of development is to grow the bulge of government so that we can do whatever it is we do and increase the expenditure of government. That is our idea of how we can grow economy. You expand the government. You expand parastatals. You expand people to pay. You expand the running of all these entities.
Everything is expanding.
You expand it. And so money that is meant for development is then excised and put into recurrent so that we can expand it. That's the idea. Surely, which country on this planet has grown with that sort of plan and design? Which one? Or are we pioneering this thing?
None. It's very sad. And actually, one thing I don't like is that also the government continue to fund public universities, because public universities should be actually be on the front line in terms of exercising creativity. We should see public universities actually coming to train the SMEs and charging them some fees, so that they can
should have partnership with such institutions. Yes.
And we, for instance, to publish an article in a journal, sometimes we pay even 100,000. And these public universities can also create their own journals, so that scholars in Kenya, instead of going to publish their articles in Europe and in America, they can as well be publishing here in Kenya. And if I'm publishing an article, I pay 100,000 to Nairobi University, and that 100,000 will help the university to be more self-sufficient.
Dr. Kamal, when you look across board, it's not for want of expertise in Kenya. It's not for want of ideas. It's not for want of even the resources, whether you want to look at it from a human perspective or anything else. The experts reside in Treasury. They literally are crunching the numbers. They know what to advise. The people who are in the education sector, the experts who sit behind that we can't see them, they are there. They know what to advise. Kenya has a wealth of human resource who would then be able to know what to do. But it would appear to me that this is just a case of a behavior that doesn't allow you to do the right thing and to do it consistently in a sustained manner. So you cannot have that proper behavior when it comes to fiscal responsibility. So it seems like it's a character issue as opposed to a resource and expertise issue. Is that the case?
Exactly. It's an attitude issue. It's a culture issue. We have a lot of brilliant people and good ideas, ideologies, but the government likes operating in chaos and in a place where there's no order. So that misappropriation and mismanagement of public funds can continue. And if I'm hiring someone, I am not so much interested about your skill level. I'm interested with your attitude. If your attitude is right, we can always train you for skills. But if your skills are okay, and you have attitude issue, even if we do what, it will not be able to change you. You could be a drunkard, you could be a person who does not respect time, you could be a person who does not respect deadlines, but you are highly skilled. So I always put attitude before skills. And as we have put it the government, what we have, we are not deficient of resources or good brains. What we have is a character issue, which is an attitude issue, which is highly would take so much time to change.
Or maybe divine intervention at this rate.
Maybe divine intervention.
Dr. Alex Kamal, thank you so much for being here this morning. Let's see what happens. But again, I think a lot more deliberation is needed here to sort out some of these issues so we don't go the way that we've seen a lot of others go. Thank you for being in the hot seat this morning. Conversations continue. Hope to see you in the near future. Asante sana.
Thank you very much.
It's 9 a.m.
Spice up your life.
It's now 9 a.m. Get effective relief from strong pain with Panadol Extra. Panadol. Relief starts here.
Good morning, this is the News Wire. I'm Leah Ubaga. Police in Nairobi have warned against planned protests to mark Katiba Day, 14 years since the enactment of the 2010 Constitution. A group of activists announced plans to hold protests in Nairobi over what they termed as abuses of the supreme law. Police have, however, warned against such plans, saying they'll not allow them to march in Nairobi, further adding that dozens of officers have already been mobilized for patrols. This event comes as at least 5 presidents are expected in Nairobi to participate in the launch of a campaign for ODM leader Raila Odinga for the African Union Commission chairmanship position. Kuppet Busia branch has vowed that its teachers won't return to work until their demands are met. County Union Secretary Moffat Okisai said that the government has failed to implement the second phase of the CBA, besides agreeing to increase their salaries and hire JSS teachers.
Walimu musilale, lale lale, walimu musilale, bado mapambano, mapambano, mapambano. The following are the irreducible demands that has ignited and incited us. 1. Immediate implementation of phase 2 of our collective bargain agreement. Baadhi ya walimu ambao wamekaa in one particular job group for over 10 years. We are requesting for immediate conversion and confirmation of the JSS teachers as promised by the president. William Ruto na serikali yake, sisi walimu wa shule za upili na vyuo vikuu hatutaenda shuleni mpaka mlio wa pesa ionekane kwa bank, mpaka walimu wetu wa JSS wapate kazi.
They've also blamed the national government for giving them false promises each time they threaten to go on strike.
A sick teacher is an unproductive. Not the problem with the government of today. They say today another thing, tomorrow they will run away from you. Juzi ndini Nyoro kama chairman wa budget anasema pesa iko, unasiki nafuata mbati waziri wa pesa anasema hana pesa. Sasa hatuna msema ukweli kwa hii serikali. Sisi mpaka mheshimiwa William Ruto pesa yetu ifike kwa bank. Ndio sisi tuende darasani hatuwezi.
Among the demands of the teachers is the implementation of the second phase of the 2021-2025 agreement, the promotion of 130,000 teachers, the employment of permanent contracts for 46,000 JSS teachers, as well as the submission of various charges or deductions from their salaries to the respective institutions. About 250 youth from Waitaluk Ward, Trans Nzoia County, are set to join Kitale National Polytechnic. Ward MCA Lusweti Furaha has urged their parents to support them so that they can benefit from programs that will solve the problem of unemployment in the country through entrepreneurship.
Wengi kwa sababu ya kosa matumaini katika maisha wameanza kukunywa pombe kiholela, wanatumia madawa ya kulevya, wameanza familia wakiwa watoto wachanga sana, hata kuweza kusustain watoto wao wakati wanaposaliwa inakuwa ni vigumu. Ni umasikini ambao uko kwa ward na tunaendelea kuzalisha on a yearly basis, na hiyo ndio ilifanya mimi nikasema ya kwamba kutetea hawa watoto wapelekwe college wapate skills, wakitafuta nafasi ya kazi wakuwe wako qualified, wakikosa nafasi ya kazi kujiajiri wenyewe ili waweze kujiendeleza katika maisha yao, and then ambao watakuwa wamegraduate tuweze kuwapatia vyombo vya kuanzisha kazi.
And in the international scene, Germany will donate 100,000 Mpox vaccine doses from its military stocks to help contain the outbreak on the African continent in the short term, as well as provide help to the affected countries. The government says it will provide the World Health Organization with flexible financial resources via various instruments to combat Mpox and also support its partners in Africa through the Gavi Vaccination Alliance. Germany has around 117,000 doses of the Mpox vaccine, which is being stockpiled by the German army, after Berlin procured it in 2022. That's the news wire. I'm La Ubaga.
.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
All right, taking a look at traffic right at the top of the hour, and seems to be reducing in certain parts here and there. On the Eastern Bypass, then making its way through towards Outer Ring, there's still some traffic here. Then let's take a quick look at coming off a thicker superhighway, and traffic still heavy around Survey, and then Landis Road has been a beehive of activity from morning. It's touching on Haile Selassie a little bit here and there, also busy Lower Kabete touching, and then coming in Wayaki Way, Limuru Road coming in through Muthaiga, very, very busy this morning, and it's still continuing. At least for now, we're probably going to see the traffic situation continue. Let's keep an eye on things. We'll talk SpiceFM KE on X, hashtag the Situation Room.
It's critical that people pay taxes. But then taxation has to have a limit. When you start overtaxing people beyond certain limit, then this is now we call robbery with violence.
We are all struggling, but we don't show. If you're not doing well, shame on you. But you have to say, I'm broke and I'm struggling. We are not okay until everybody is okay.
We are pretending to have political parties. Why don't we just be honest? And we say, these are the Luyas, these are the Kambas, these are the Kikuyus, and we find ourselves in Kenya.
You know, with politics and leadership, no matter what you do, there will always be a complaint. There will always be the assumption that you're either stealing or you're not doing things right. As a leader, don't fear. If you know you're doing the right thing, you've thought about it, you've got an expert advice, do it, then understand later.
This country, we don't need prayers. Prayers is between you and God. Good governance and thinkers who care about the country and not their stomach.
That's what we need.
The Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Okoh, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latiff, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is The Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
8 minutes after 9 o'clock, almost at 9 after 9. We almost made it, but all right. Here we are into the final hour of Kenya's biggest conversation this morning in the Situation Room. And we're going to now say, okay, with the issues happening here, how are we going to be able to take advantage of what's happening out there? How can Kenya take advantage of some of those? And we're going to have that conversation with our guest who's already seated. Tell you about him in a minute. Okay, CT, I want to go abroad for university education.
Good for you.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
But I get confused oftentimes. People might scam me out of my no shillings. people might decide to just take advantage of me and say, okay, come and then we'll do it later.
Where people have done precisely that in this country. Yes.
I don't know which country to go to. Should I go to New Zealand? Will they not like me? Should I go to Germany? What should I do? Where should I go? How do I answer all these questions? It's just buzzing in my head.
And even if I want to go, how do I even start?
Where? Who? Where? How do I apply?
How will I know which university to go to given the desire that I have for training? And how will I know I can afford it? How will I even ensure that, if it is my child, that apart from admission, where will they stay? And I don't have relatives in that country.
Exactly. Now, there's somebody who can answer all these questions for you. Cradle is putting together the World Study Abroad Fair. It's on the 31st of August, and all these questions you can get answers to. Which university can you go to match with your skills or match with your desire, your career choices for the future? Which country would then be able to offer that for you? How can you apply for scholarships? How can you then apply for admission? Which visa requirements would you need? Imagine all of this information in one room for one day, everything at one time. You could basically walk into the Gallant Mall on the 31st of August at 11 a.m. and walk out at 4 p.m. with all your questions answered, admission in tow, scholarship applied for, visa information in the bag, and you can get it done. We're going to need you to register though. Go to www.cradle.com. at CRAYDEL, register there, and then you can also dial 0799 000 All these questions that are having me in a twist will be answered. Voila. All right. This conversation this hour is looking at how Kenya essentially can leverage its, on the global scale, basically. And we've looked at quite a number of things in the last an hour when we talked about the Finance Act. And okay, so we're in trouble. Okay, we'll be able to pay bills. How are we going to be able to foster a proper working environment? And so, to help us out in this conversation this morning about how Kenya can take advantage of global labor market trends amidst these tough economic times is Laban Njuguna, who is the founder and CEO of Zabuni Specialty Coffee. He's been here before, and we're looking at, okay, so what does it look like out there? Laban, good morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
Fantastic.
Good to have you in the room again.
Thank you.
How's the coffee brewing?
Coffee's brewing great. Never been better. So my palate is still craving for an Americano.
Oh, at this moment?
Yes.
Okay, well, I don't know if I can help you with that, but what I can help you with is a proverb. And Siti has it, and he can tell you where it's from, and then maybe you can tell us what you think about that and how would you interpret it. Yes?
All right.
Okay.
Our proverbs for the whole of this week come from the People's Republic of Algeria. Okay. There is an excess of familiarity at the root of all hostility. There is an excess of familiarity at the root of all hostility.
What do you think about that?
There is an excess of familiarity at the root of all hostility. I think prepare well. Prepare well. I think I'd say prepare well. Prepare well. Prepare well for whatever is ahead of you, whether it's a challenge or whether it's something that you've done before.
Yeah.
I think for me it's prepare well. Yeah.
Okay. You never know what you're going to face, so be ready for it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Can all be interpreted any which way?
Actually, it is. One of the beautiful things about asking for someone's opinion is that you always get to look at that proverb in a way that you couldn't have thought of. Because they bring their own experiences into the understanding of that proverb.
Right.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so as we get into this, Laban, from the outside looking in, or even from the inside looking out, it would seem as though there are very little in terms of options when you can, leverage with opportunity. Many have said that what needs to happen right now is foster an environment whereby the private entities or the commercial markets can actually thrive, and the only way in which to do that is to leverage them with what's happening on the global scale, on the global markets. What is happening on the global markets that Kenya could actually start to take advantage if we're going to jump right into that conversation right now?
Thanks a lot, Ndu, CT, Ken, for having me here once again. First off, it's my daughter's birthday, so happy birthday. Back there in the United States.
What's your daughter's name?
Marugi.
Well, happy birthday, Marugi.
Birthday,
Could be asleep now,
Yes.
though.
She is asleep. She is asleep.
It's been recorded. It is on YouTube.
She'll get it.
She'll get it.
Yeah. She'll be able to see that. She'll be pretty excited. I think Kenya has a lot. I've been here now for a few weeks, and I've actually been going around working with or looking at the TVETs, seeing what we have here to offer. And what is happening on the global scale is they're just as desperate and need people just as much as we need jobs. So I think there's a win-win situation here. And for me, whenever I think about Kenya, I think about a very resilient, hardworking, creative kind of product as far as people are concerned. So the global job market, which, I'm based in the United States, and it's something we're looking at. We have the baby boomer generation exiting. And then there are certain jobs that the local people there don't want to do for whatever reason. And then, combined with, same thing we did here. I think for a very long time, there was a big push towards, doing degrees and forgetting what the technical jobs are. So when I talk about this space for me, I think it's looking at the North American market and knowing that Kenya is actually uniquely positioned as far as training the people, as far as exposure, our communication skills. So we do have a very uniquely positioned demographic to be able to take advantage of this need.
What needs to happen then for that to start to be? Because there have been many conversations, and I think these conversations take place globally, whereby, whether you're domiciled in a particular geographical area, to say that in order for thriving to happen, from a developmental point of view, you need to then be able to work at a surplus. It is the surplus then that will go towards your development. But in order to have that happen, you must manufacture something, you must sell it, and the profits are what you rack up over time that then essentially allow you to get into that stage of development. But what are the opportunities that you can then match to availability? So,
what I've been looking at when I look at North America and predominantly the Midwest, and I look at Kenya, I look at manufacturing jobs. We're looking at some engineering jobs, and then we're looking at the trades. The trades are, electricians, plumbers, carpenters, HVAC technicians.
What?
HVAC.
What on earth is that?
Like refrigeration, the guys who do the air conditioning and all that. So who fix that kind of stuff.
Yes.
Heating and cooling. Truckers, diesel techs or diesel mechanics. Those are the kind of jobs that I do feel they're very well paying, by the way. Hapa tunazita kazi za mkono. Huko we call them the trades. And there's a big gap.
How did this come about? I'm actually very curious.
Well, like I mentioned earlier, I think it's the same thing that Kenya did for a while. We did not concentrate on those technical jobs in the United States as well. And so people were being pushed towards 4-year college degrees, sitting behind a desk somewhere as opposed to taking part in learning a technical skill. And now they're trying to make up for that, starting this career pathways and things like that very early in high school. But it's still not enough.
But then, I asked the question. There's a narrative that one reads about when you listen to what politicians in the US talk about when they are campaigning against a country like China. There's a narrative of they have taken our jobs. And you are saying the complete opposite, that the jobs actually exist.
Yes. I think when we're not doing the political speak and the dog and pony show,
yes.
They do know that they do need the jobs. Unfortunately, immigration is used as a wedge issue in the United States. But for me and for many others, it's an economic issue. When you're a small business owner and you can't be able to get the right or necessary talent and labor so that your business may be able to grow or expand, then there's a big problem. The largest businesses, or the quantity-wise in the United States, are small businesses. It's not this big billion-dollar Fortune 500, companies you see around. And they're the ones that get hurt when they can't find the right labor or the right skill set. Their businesses are the ones that get hurt. And these are the people that employ people in our communities down there in the Mashinani. It's the small businesses. So when they can't get access to the necessary labor, it becomes a problem.
But certain things need to happen. There needs to be an environment that is created that would adequately address these issues. But do we see that happening here? Because we can talk about there being opportunities around the world, but then there needs to be an environment that is created locally, domestically, that would then allow or to foster this kind of thing. If you can't match them, if you're not, again, putting people through the process, whether it is education or education and training, then you don't ripen them for the opportunities that are abroad. What needs to happen domestically in order for that?
Fantastic question. So one of the things I've been doing is working very closely with government. And the reason is because when you're dealing with a foreign, sphere, let me put it that way, for us looking for labor here and people here looking for employment there, then you have to work with, the necessary entities here. And that for us has been State Department for Diaspora Affairs. They've been fantastic. It's been one of the, to me, departments that I do believe has brought a fresh breath and a new injection of creativity and vigor to this space as far as government is concerned, in my opinion. Then TVETs, the TVETs department is another entity that we've been working with, just because they're the ones who are doing a lot of this training. They do have centers of excellence, if I may call them that. I was very surprised over the last few weeks when I've traveled around the country and seen how well equipped these TVETs are. There's some that are so well equipped, I haven't even seen entities like that in the United States. They're that good. So, and when you talk to the instructors, you're like, man, these guys really know their stuff.
Yeah.
And it gives you a lot of confidence. Me, as someone who's now doing HR recruiting for the United States, it gives a lot of confidence when you see that, knowing that, man, the guys that came out of here are probably very well qualified. So Kenya, I think Kenya has everything in place, but I still think and feel like there's not a whole government approach to accessing these jobs out there. And until they're able to do that, whether it's branding Kenyan labor, being out there a lot more and speaking about this product, I think there's a lot of opportunities that are just passing us by. If you look at countries like Philippines, Vietnam, they've taken over whole industries in the United States. The Philippines, if you look at the healthcare sector, they're literally everywhere. You look at people from Southeast Asia, like Vietnam, the cosmetology side. You go to any, you get a pedicure or whatever in the US or eyebrows or whatever, it's going to be someone from Southeast Asia who's doing that. Eastern Europe, in the trucking industry, And so for me, I just feel like Kenya is actually uniquely placed and prepared to be able to take advantage of this jobs in the trades. I think as long as there's a cohesive and a collective approach to this,
could work for us.
Yeah.
My concerns are two. One, the president, when he says he's looking for jobs abroad, and it's cut deals that will take thousands of Kenyans abroad for these job opportunities. What does it mean precisely? And then you've spoken about a joint collective sort of approach that the government needs to adopt if this has to work. So is the government approach currently working? Because the president says their jobs, the Ministry of Labour, Foreign Affairs, they say we're negotiating deals and there'll be jobs abroad. So is this approach working? And if there's one thing that you'll eliminate or add in this approach, what would that be?
Thank you. I think the government is doing something. The two entities that I've worked with so far have been fantastic. That is the TVET people and the State Department of Diaspora Affairs. That is why I'm here. This trip was not even about coffee. This was predominantly about the labor immigrant market. So there's always room for improvement. There's always things that can be enhanced and done better. And I think for me, that focus needs to be channeled with all the entities, whether it's creating, like when they have security situations, I see them bring, a whole government approach, probably security agencies to handle something.
Yeah.
I think that's where we are. Because I just feel like I said, you look at the TVET institutions, fantastic. They're doing a fantastic job over there. If government is able now to bring together all these other entities, labor, the branding people or the marketing people, and bring necessary HR experts to appeal. People there don't know that Kenya has this skill set, has all these skill sets, has this. They don't know. They're just not aware that we even speak English or good English for that matter.
Really?
I'm telling you.
We're
2024.
We're at a place where
good English.
Have they met you?
Good English.
Have they met you?
Now they have.
And they still doubt.
No, good English.
Ken, if you have an entire country of people who think that Africa is one country.
Really?
Yes, the reference point is, you're from Africa.
And South Africa is the capital.
The thing is, he's right.
Really?
Yes. You see, you come from a background where you are taught the geography and history of other countries. So you are aware. You actually do know.
Yeah.
You can talk about the St. Lawrence Seaway and even explain how it works because somebody taught you geography. The gap exists, and that gap is probably what disadvantages people in this country who could benefit from those opportunities. And so someone who understands both worlds is probably best placed to ensure that that gap is actually filled.
And that's why you sit to bridge that gap.
So that's where, yes, I sit. So actually what happened was earlier this year we were on a trade mission with the state of Nebraska. We came to Kenya in February. It was a trade mission led by our Secretary of State. And there was about 15 business people. And of that, there was two gentlemen there. One by the name of Todd Vettel and the other one by Dean Alberts. And those guys are in the logistics industry. And after spending 10, 12 days here, they were like, this is fantastic. They could clearly communicate because they would engage with everyone around them at the hotel and wherever else. And so what they've been doing for a long time is sourcing for labor from around the world. But after the Kenyan trip, they decided they were going to start single sourcing. And that way they don't have to deal with hundreds of different cultures because they felt like they were a culture management company and just single source because they can get everything they need here.
Yeah.
And so when we got back, that's how this whole thing started was, can you help us be part of this process and put this together? So since we're single sourcing from Kenya and me being the native guy.
It's unbelievable still.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable.
That's how I got to be part of this team. And I'm a sucker for adding value to people. Anytime there's something that's happening where we can help move someone from point A to point B, I think you can always count me in on that process.
Okay. We're going to take a break in a minute, but just what I'm looking at here is that there seem to be so many pieces, and they seem to be strewn all over the place. Skill is over here. Government participation is over here. Opportunity externally is over here. Education within the country and possibility of education abroad. It just seems to me as though there needs to be that one needle and thread then that starts to sew all of this together.
I agree.
Who's that holds the needle and the thread?
I think it's a group of people, simply because there are entities on that other side and there are entities on this other side. For us, we just want to be that bridge that helps identify, help with the immigration process, place, and help people successfully settle on that other side. Whether it's by themselves or with their families, we want to be able to make sure that people are set on a foundation that they can be able then to thrive off of. I went to the US 24, 25 years ago, and I guarantee you I feel like if I had somebody holding my hand from day one, the outcome may have been different. Well, it turned out okay, but it could have been better. it could have been better. I think a lot of mistakes that some of us made because we're kind of just figuring it out. And we're going to school. It wasn't that hard. Finding a job and earning a living is a little bit of a more hectic or chaotic situation.
I imagine so. Laban Njuguna is our guest this hour, and we're looking at how Kenya can leverage, what we have here with external opportunities, essentially to boost economic growth and development. We continue with that conversation. We come back from this break now at 29 minutes to 10 o'clock. Very important things here that need to be taken advantage of, whether it is on a private commercial level or whether it is on a government level, and also when you see the two combined, I think. So let's come back and continue with this conversation after this.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
Patrick Lodge, Otieno Lumumba. Karibu sana.
Asante sana.
CT Muga.
CT Lodge.
Muga,
not Muga.
He's here, and here's the day's proverb.
One man marries a woman. Another man marries troubles.
Is he the same man?
Spice.
A lion cannot eat more than 2 donkeys. It will die a natural death because there is no ICU in the forest. In Kenya, it has become the situation that you cannot conduct 2 elections. In fact,
with the same IEBC.
You can't.
I tell you about this Indian friend of mine who was enjoying other Indians in the group. He wrote the word valve and told them, read it.
So how did he say it? I really want to know.
The valve. Because kina Ednah, it's you've said the B's and the P's. Kila kitu mkisia kisema atasema opposite.
Opposite?
Ukisema hii anasema opposite.
Opposite.
Wewe ukisikiliza na unasikia opposite.
The Situation Room, Spice. The only way to start your day.
So everyone make sure to visit the Cradle World Fair at the Galana Mall Parklands on August 31st. Make sure to register by visiting www.cradle.com or call 0799 000 444.
The weather with SpiceFM.
15 degrees, and we're looking at partly cloudy conditions in Nairobi. We'll see highs of 21 and lows of 14 today. 25 will be the high and lows of 14 in a sunny Nakuru, currently at 16. And into Nyeri, it's partly sunny at 15. We'll see highs of 27, and we'll see highs of 24 and lows of 12 in a sunny Eldoret at 12. I beg your pardon, at 14. 25 and sunny in Mombasa with highs of 30, and we'll see highs of 30 in a mostly sunny Malindi at 25, coming down to lows of 24. It is sunny at 21 in Kisumu with highs of 30, and we'll see highs of 29 in a sunny Kakamega at 19, coming down to lows of 15. Kampala at 21 is sunny, highs of 29, and Dar es Salaam at 24 is sunny, going to highs of 29 as well. It is 16 and sunny in Johannesburg with highs of 27, and at 27 sunny conditions in Mogadishu, going to highs of 30 and lows of 25. 15 and sunny in Addis Ababa with highs of 20 and lows of 13, while Lagos is sunny at 25. We'll see highs of 29. It's 20 and partly sunny in Kinshasa with highs of 33. We're looking into a sunny Beijing at 30 Tuesday afternoon, going to highs of 31. It's 13 and sunny in Paris with highs of 20, and we'll see highs of 26 and highs of 25 in a cloudy London at 16. New York is clear at 21, coming into Tuesday, highs of 29 and lows of 21.
Sugar and spice and everything nice. Spice FM.
Spice up your life.
Not so busy in the city this morning, coming through towards the end of traffic hour. I think we're going to see Landy still really busy for most parts of today, but we're just going to keep watching that. Of course, right around bus station, and that's going to be crazy. Then also coming in from the stage where a lot of traffic out of the city still continues. All right, so traffic still continues at Survey as you go towards Wangari Maathai, but whatever was happening on Wangari Maathai Way before, that is all cleared up. Looking much better on Ring Road Westlands. Talk to us through the morning. SpiceFM KE on X.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
Right now, you have a few ministries or state departments taking the lead and just being there, kind of out on their own. I think one of the newest state departments is the State Department for Diaspora Affairs. Mm-hmm. And those guys have done a fantastic job. From everything I've seen and heard, I think Kenyans in the diaspora are very satisfied with this entity. There's room for improvement. There are things they can do better. But so far, I think they've done a fantastic job. I think when it comes to austerity measures and this finance bill, I think everybody was getting a haircut. But if government listens, I hope this is one of the things they'll listen to. I do not think that the State Department of Diaspora Affairs is one of the entities that should be getting a haircut, especially because we see how dire the need is when it comes to these jobs. And to me, I believe fundamentally that life is about relationships. We've been here now twice as the state of Nebraska to Kenya, wanting to open up more trade. So we have demonstrated the commitment to work in areas that can be mutually beneficial. So for me, I do believe that if government is able to look at these markets, their unique needs, and start preparing Kenyans for those markets, the technical aspects of things, I think, are already there. They're in place. It's just now these soft issues, cultural and orientation programs. What you do in the US or what is acceptable there might not be what is done in Europe or acceptable there.
Yeah.
So there needs to be an emphasis on that. The biggest thing for American employers is retention, especially in industries like trucking where the turnover is at 90%.
Why?
I have no idea. It's high because people move from one trucking company to another, looking for greener pastures, whether they believe that to be true or not.
Are the jobs well paying, this particular job of trucking?
For example, they started off at about $65,000.
That's per year.
Per year.
Yeah.
Per year. So even it's about 700,000 Kenya shillings a month. But the thing with those jobs is you're away from home, at a couple of weeks at a time, maybe more. One of my partners is in the logistics industry. He runs a trucking company. His turnover is about 40%, which is really low. That's like a miracle in the trucking industry. And his main thing is just how he treats his drivers. Everything that he does in that company is geared towards making his drivers have a fantastic experience, a seamless experience. The support staff and how they're trained to be able to support these drivers to succeed in the field. But most companies or many companies won't do that. And then you have a generation now, trucking for a long time in the United States was kind of a career that people aspired to. and that's not happening anymore. But that's where I say there's opportunity for us. I think starting this year, for the next 10 years, the United States is going to need about 100,000 truck drivers annually. And they're not going to get those people locally. Yeah.
So I almost hear you saying that there's an opportunity where that can happen because, okay, so you talked about diaspora. So now we're trying to connect the dots. Talked about diaspora and how that needs to be opened up and see what opportunities are available there and what the ministry and with that department is doing here. All right. We've said in the US and some other countries, US specifically, there's availability, 100,000 people to be in the trucking industry.
Trucking, that's just one area.
Just one area. So if we were to connect the dots, there's possibility of training on this side with opening up of the conversations on the other side and connecting the dots where we already know that there's a huge diaspora contribution towards Kenya's economy every year and that we could see that raising that particular profile just because of the opportunity that's available. Is government aware? You are aware. Are these some of the things that you share when you come?
Yes, and if they weren't, now they are, that you've brought it up. Yes, so there's a lot of areas that we can be able to train towards. Now, some of these jobs, the biggest hurdle with the U.S. labor market when you're an immigrant is the immigration process, especially for employment. It's tedious, it's long, it's expensive. But we have employers who are willing now to shoulder that burden as long as there's a commitment from individuals to fulfill the agreed amount of time that they're going to work for. So if you go there and you've agreed, for 4 years, I'll work for you, and then after that, we'll figure things out, then you got to honor that, because number one, don't forget that there's always someone behind you in Kenya also seeking an opportunity.
Yep.
So you can either burn it for them or you can go and be a good ambassador for who the Kenyan worker is, right? So when we're speaking about workforce development, that's exactly what we need to do. Identify these areas, and then government should aggressively go for them. This is going to be good long term, at least for the people that are out there, educated, a lot of energy and creativity, and they don't have a place to exert that energy.
Yeah.
So if government can really take a holistic approach to this, I think there'll be very good outcomes all around.
Let me ask the question. The best practices. You said there are countries who have their citizens working in the US, and there are certain sectors where you'll find a dominance, the presence is greater. What has been their government's participation now? Because and how is it that they've made this possible?
So, for example, if you look at the Philippines, the Philippines have a whole pretty much ministry for immigrant labor. They figured that out, and then they trained their people to go and take these nursing jobs, some of this, cosmetology jobs and things like that. And if you go to the Philippines, you'll see an industry of really training these people to be able to take advantage of those jobs. I think the Kenyan government can do that, can brand it, can train out there and be able to market this labor, to be able to take advantage of this. You look at India and you look at the ICT sector in the United States, they come in their hundreds of thousands every year. You go to a place like North Dallas, you won't find anybody else there. A whole part of Texas that's literally just people from India. Housing, everything. You go, doctors, everything. You'll just find a lot of Indian people there. And that's what I'm saying. If we do get a government approach that sits down and understands this is the opportunity and this is how we take advantage of it, I think a lot can be done for people that don't have good paying jobs.
I'm going to ask an unfair question, but I need to ask it. So, for them to have that number of people, okay, they do have the numbers. What is this specialized training beyond the technical knowledge or the academic knowledge that somebody must have that goes into ensuring that these are suitable individuals who will fit into that economy and ensure that they actually thrive, given that, because the requirement for the job is one thing.
Yes.
Whether you'll actually fit in and be able to live well there is another thing.
So that is why, together with the Department of Diaspora Affairs, we have come up with a cultural orientation program for the United States. Very extensive. It teaches you how to become a member of that community, how to fit in, understand the financial system and how things work there. They're very different. And for those of you that have traveled, even if it's not for a long time, you do realize that we do things completely different out there than we do over here. So if we're setting people up for success, then that training begins here. That training begins here. It's emphasized and hammered home so that when people go there, they can understand that it's not just you.
Yeah.
You have the, there's a lot of people back home or in the country here who are banking on you to get it right as well. Yeah.
Okay. So the whole of this conversation, one thing that has struck me is you have put the government right at the center of this. Don't you think private sector driven initiatives work better and work more? And I believe you come from the private sector. That's perhaps the reason why you're here. That's perhaps the reason why your state identified you. Don't you think whatever government takes the lead, people tend to shy away, as opposed to when private sector takes a lead? I know something that is happening. Last week, I had the Labour Cabinet Secretary, Dr. Alfred Mutua, and one of the things that they said is they are relooking at the certification of all the agencies, for example, that are involved in taking people abroad. Forget about the US, but just abroad generally. So private sector versus government, you will still go for the government because you put them right at the center of this.
So here's the thing, and I don't want to seem like a government basher, but I also do realize that they do have a place in this. You need to understand, in America, we try to get, it's in us, it's in our DNA. You want as little of government in your life as possible, right? You try and make sure that anything you can do as a business, as an individual, you do without government assistance or support. So it's a little bit different out here, where a lot of things will need government participation for them to be able to thrive and succeed.
Right.
Especially if we're trying to look for the face of Kenya, then we kind of need a government. For example, I didn't know there's, I think, over 250 TVETs in Kenya. I didn't know which ones have programs that are doing, for example, HVAC, but they're there. They have fantastic departments. I went to Eldoret Polytechnic. They have a HVAC whole department over there. Automotive, Meru Polytechnic, unbelievable. The kind of facilities and instructors they have over there. They've done a fantastic job. I'd never have known those things, right? And there are many others in Kenya that are doing different things. These national polytechnics are fantastic. So I think government does have a role to play. I don't think it's government-led. I'm private sector. I'm not government. But on this end, especially at this nascent stages of thinking about how to access this American market in a significant way for those jobs, I think government has to have a part to play.
Okay, so how would you see, because there are already a number of people, for there to be an entire department for diaspora, that means that there are clearly a number of people who are already clicking in and they're already engaging. But what we're saying is that it needs to be a lot more, streamlined. It needs to be regulated and then create opportunity for others to join. Do you see that those steps or those strides are being made with as much caution or with as much deliberation as is needed for, just from what we've said in terms of the potential that's available to really harness this potential that's available to build on this side?
Yeah, let me plug the person that's leading the State Department of Diaspora Affairs, Rosalind Njogu. I think I think that's what, to me, epitomizes someone who's probably come from the private sector and gone into government and made a huge difference. She does get it. She does understand the diaspora. She does understand what the need is. Government, my understanding is they're pretty protective of their toughs, right? So this is something that has to probably come from the top. Having this whole government approach and having somebody chair that or lead that in a way that will be advantageous both to Kenya and to the Kenyan people. There's something unique that Kenya has that the region doesn't have.
Doesn't have?
Kizungu. So the way we communicate with the clarity that we communicate with, that is such an attractive element over there. And so I'm not even worried about people trying to source from other areas. I just wanted that when this Kenyan employer goes there, the employer there will be wondering why they never, thought about accessing Kenya sooner.
Yeah.
But government, for example, my understanding is, this our diaspora department is getting a haircut of 50%. 50%. And if you look at the return on investment, I mean, come on, we're doing a few $1 billion.
So that's why it would look as though then there's no direct interest in making sure that some of these things happen.
Exactly, because you sit down and ask yourself, is government getting this bit that, number one, despite what we're doing as far as remittances are concerned, the Kenyan diaspora is more than that. We can leverage them for these jobs. We can leverage them for opportunities and relationships in the U.S. market. And I don't think we're being utilized that effectively, at least not most of us. And that's where government can be able to do better by having presence, by coming out there, whether it's doing job fairs or letting them know that we do have the necessary skill set that's here. But who leads that effort? I don't know.
The government talks about, the president has said very clearly, in no uncertain terms, and talked about the thousands of jobs that are available, in different parts of the world. And when you do a little bit of scrutiny, you kind of find out what kinds of jobs those are. But we don't see them equating. And if you just look a little closer, you don't see them equating to some of the numbers, that you've been talking about this morning. And so maybe, less skilled positions, less skills required for those positions, less time, and that you can move from one to the other. Do you think there's space for those as well?
I do. Remote jobs. And I think there's a huge opportunity there as well. We find also Philippines, again, has taken a lot of advantage in this area when it comes to accountants, when it comes to customer service reps, people that we can use here, mainly because we have fantastic communication, fantastic internet. So those remote jobs is another area that we can tap into in a big way.
Yeah.
But then again, they don't know. They don't know Kenya has this capacity or this capability. And so, for me, government has to understand the importance of branding and marketing this product, this labor product that's coming. We've educated all these people, spend a lot of resources to do that. Can we now at least put some resources towards making sure that these people are gainfully employed? Yeah.
What would it look like if there actually was? You want to take brush and paint this picture of utopia where everything is working, is some kind of symbiosis and everything looks good. But what would it look like if a little bit of what you're talking about was actually achieved and that government was actually sending the proper message to the right audience in terms of who was going to pick it up, and that there was reciprocity from the other side as well, whereby you say, okay, this is great, this is actually what we need, and then you enter into this dance where people are leading and following? What would it look like?
We probably wouldn't have people in the streets to begin with. But I do think for an employer on the other side, this is this is what gives them the capacity or the capability to move to the next level.
Right.
For an employee, it's being gainfully employed and your skill set being appreciated and utilized in the right way. These are very different markets. Like I said, there's a lot of challenges when you get to a new place. But I think that's also exciting, to be able to discover and experience or explore something totally different. The goal here would be those dividends that come to these individuals there will trickle back this way. Most people who are coming for immigrant labor jobs will end up coming back here, whether it's in retirement or to settle. I think we've seen some of these programs that have been done with government, like the one to the UK. People come back here. When you have 350 people coming back with a few million in their pocket, that's impact in the communities that they come from.
Yeah. And
these jobs are not temporary. These are permanent jobs, especially in North America. We're talking about permanent jobs. Apart from ag jobs that may be temporary, like 9-month jobs, most of these others are on 2, 3, 4 year contracts, which is a good amount of time for somebody to be able to build themselves up and do something significant. If after those 4 years they've had enough, home is always here.
Yeah.
And you can come back and grow and build Kenya.
Do you think?
Yep. Okay. So where we are right now is that, putting all of this together, there is a need, right? There is an opportunity. There's a government in place. The structure is there. The structure is in place. Structures on the other side also available. And it's very clear that all of these things can actually come together. Does it matter the character of the individuals who are in government at that time to see it? Because, it doesn't take much for you to see the opportunity, but then it would take more for you to do something about it after having seen the opportunity. Does the character of the individual who sits in that position at that time, who then needs to do something about all of this and bring it together matter? Maybe somebody doesn't really care. They could say they do, but maybe somebody's not really interested in that aspect, or doesn't actually see that there's a huge opportunity here that you can actually fill up some of the holes that clearly Finance Act 2023-2024 has not. Does it matter who the individual is, or should you just be able to look at it and say, you know what, guys, here's an opportunity, let's take it and run with it?
Yeah, leadership matters, right? Some of these things, maybe like labor, is not something that is usually at the top of the totem pole when you're talking about, government. But I think for any country in sub-Saharan Africa, if I think now it's a national security issue. Yeah. They need to address this, and they need to address this in a holistic and serious way. If it continues being lip service and mouth talk, then these guys are going to be in for a hard time. Whatever government that is, whether it's this one or the one that comes after that. But bottom line is the opportunities are there.
Yep.
Government needs to have a cohesive approach to accessing these jobs. And most of it is basically, to me, if they're able to brand this labor, if they're able to market it in the right way and to the right industries there, you're going to see a lot of people go to North America and be able to take advantage of this.
And it will work. Laban Njuguna, thank you very much for being here this morning. Founder and CEO of Zabuni Specialty Coffee. We've been looking at what Kenya can actually take advantage of on a global scale. Thanks so much. Conversations continue in the future. Thank you for keeping it Kenya's biggest conversation throughout this Tuesday. We're back again tomorrow morning. Ken, Sindio, 6 a.m. God willing. Talk tomorrow. It's 10 a.m.
10 a.m. Get effective relief from strong pain with Panadol Extra. Panadol. Relief starts here.
Good morning. This is the News Wire. I'm Leah Ubaga. And President William Ruto will today formally launch Kenya's African Union Commission chairmanship bid. Kenya is fronting opposition leader Raila Odinga for the seat. He is set to battle it out with 4 other candidates in an election slated for February next year. At least 5 African presidents are set to grace the event, with South Sudan President Salva Kiir having already arrived at State House Nairobi ahead of the unveiling. Presidents Yoweri Museveni of Uganda, Samia Suluhu of Tanzania and Hassan Sheikh Mohammed are also set to attend the launch. Other representatives from Rwanda are also expected to be in attendance. Detectives are holding a 25-year-old woman linked to stealing over 600,000 Kenya shillings in SIM swap fraud. The woman arrested in Bomet County is connected to SIM swap scam, where the cyber criminals hijack the victim's cell phone number and use it to gain access to his or her sensitive personal data and bank accounts through the mobile banking apps available on Android and other smartphones. Once they take control of the swapped SIM card, they insert it in their phone, access the financial accounts and transfer all the funds to other scammed telephone numbers. Police said they recovered 4 mobile phones and 27 SIM cards from the woman.